Good morning all and welcome to the ordinary meeting of Council, Wednesday the 25th of November 2020. And I'd like to now declare the meeting open at 9 a.m. sharp. We have no leave of absence or apologies. So I'd like to now call on Father Schumacher to conduct the opening prayers. Thank you, Father.
Just before I lead our opening prayer, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be here with you, to lead you in prayer and to begin your proceedings here today. I'd like to, first of all, thank God for the year that we've had and how far that we've come, because it's been an awful year in so many ways. But I want to thank God for you and for the good work that you do, because you have been leading our region, to actually get through all the hardships, especially the pandemic. We know we've come out of the drought and, a lot of things that are actually happening. So in a special way, I want to start my prayer here today by acknowledging the good work that you do and pray in a special way that God will continue to inspire you all, as you try, to lead us as you strive to actually support the common good, so that everybody who lives here would actually live their dignity and feel that they are people created in God's image and likeness. Now, I'd like you to please join me, if you're comfortable, to say the Lord's Prayer, because that's a prayer that we hold together as Christians. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I'd like to leave you today with a prayer of St. Francis, which is a prayer that reminds us of how we can become instruments of peace. And the prayer goes like this: Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. We make our prayers through Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Father, and we trust that you will have a blessed day today. We know you're quite welcome to stay on, but we know that you're a very busy man, and you're certainly free to go about your business, and we'd wish you all the best in doing so. Thank you, Father. Right, I'd like to now call on our Indigenous portfolio holder, Councillor Duff, to conduct the Welcome to Country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the traditional owners of the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka people, and acknowledge the elders, both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Item 5 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Do any councillors have declarations of interest matters that they would like to declare to the meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the Pin-Up Park, I think that one's been finalised, so I'm right for that one. But I do have a declared conflict with regards to Australia Day, being a member of the chair of the Kingaroy Australia Day Committee.
Thank you. Then, Councillor Potter, you comfortable with leaving the room on that as we get to that matter? Councillor Froloff?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I would like to make a declarable conflict of interest in item 18.2 of the agenda, and I elect to voluntarily leave the meeting for the duration of the discussion and the vote.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Froloff. If we can make sure that both of those declarations of interest are recorded in the minutes, and we'll make sure that you both exit the room when we get to those items. Thank you very much. Any other declarations of interest? Okay, if not, we'll move. Mr.
Miss
CEO.
Smith, the hospital board minutes. So I had them already pre-submitted. That they were so it'd be Councillor Potter and Councillor Schumacher because they're on the board as a personal member. So that would be a declarable conflict in both the councillors. So just a reminder, councillors, as has happened, all those ones that are here today, these were supplied prior to the meeting, and that's now the regs. So we were aware. The other one that I've sought some clarification on in speaking to colleagues is once a matter's been dealt with, just for general information, the peanut is a great example. The matter remains dealt with unless something changes, and it's the council's responsibility. So, Mr Mayor, yours with the KTP, that's dealt with, it doesn't come up again. Unless circumstances change, then the onus, well, sorry to say, the onus is on you guys to inform that there's been a change of circumstance. So once it's a declared interest and you leave the room, well then you would need to advise us why you would want to stay should something change. If it's not, if it's been voted on, it's been dealt with, well then that decision stands unless something changes. So they're the ones I've got, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. If we could have conflict of interest in relation to the Hospital Foundation Board membership of both Councillor Potter and Councillor Schumacher recorded. Are you both offering to voluntarily leave the room? Good. Thank you, councillors. Okay. Item 6. Now we have a deputation, and the recommendation is that the petition be received and a petition as such. The petition be received and referred to the CEO for consideration and relevant action, and it's in relation to a petition from residents of Lenigan Road, Glendon, requesting the road be sealed. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Duff. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. 7.1 at page 7 of the notes. The minutes of the council meeting held on the 14th of October 2020 are contained in your notes, and the recommendation is that those minutes be received and the recommendations therein be adopted. We have a mover. Thanks, Councillor Schumacher, and a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Henson. For or against? Speakers? Those for? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 7.2. Minutes of the special council meeting held on the 28th of October 2020 at 48. The special council meeting was held on that day, and the recommendation is that the minutes of the special council meeting held on the 28th of October 2020 be received and the recommendations therein be adopted. We have a mover. Councillor Duff, thank you. Councillor Schumacher seconds. Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. At 53, 7.3, minutes of the special council meeting held on the 8th of November 2020. Recommendation is that the minutes of the special council meeting held on 18 November 2020 be received and the recommendations therein be adopted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, thank you. A seconder. Thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Councillors wish to speak for or against? Any issues raised in the minutes? To raise in the minutes? No. Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Business outstanding. Item 8.1 at 58 on the agenda, and I'm just going to refer to our Mr. CEO to provide a short briefing on that matter before we go to council. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. This is the first of these reports. It's been a work in progress for several months. Councillors, we've changed the software over since July. We're now able to produce these with a relative degree of ease, which is lovely. So this will become a standing item for the general meeting that will keep track of the resolutions that are outstanding from previous councils. So it's just reporting for information, and they will be followed up. We've had, up until this meeting, we had 183 resolutions through the books already, year to date. So we'll be more than last year, again, as we continue to funnel information out into the public domain. For the last 3 years in sequence, the General's dealt with more business each year. So yeah, so very pleased to be able to present this information to you in a usable format, and very much looking forward to tidying all these up.
Thanks very much, Mr. CEO. So a little bit of background here. This is effectively a register of resolutions, outstanding resolutions as such. So where decisions are taken by council at an ordinary meeting, such that they become a resolution of council. Staff then proceed as a matter of priority to implement those resolutions. And then this will be provided, this report is then provided on all resolutions that are outstanding that have not been implemented at the time of the next ordinary meeting. It is provided there, as you can see. Fortunately, and congratulations and thank you, Mr. CEO, and to your staff, that of those 182 resolutions, you can see there's not too many outstanding, there's only a handful there, and I'm sure that they're a continuing body of work. Right, so the recommendation is that the business outstanding table for the ordinary council meeting be received for information. Mover for such. Thanks, Councillor Duff. Seconder, thanks, Councillor Jones. Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? For or against? Any questions in relation to the content of the table? No? Okay, those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 9.1 at 64. So the WebRock annual general meeting is coming up, and it's going to be held on Friday, the 4th of December at 10 a.m. in Maryborough. Now, WebRock stands for the Wide Bay Bennett Regional Organisation of Councils. It's a forum whereby mayors, deputy mayors, and CEOs come together, and has a fairly broad charter as outlined in the Constitution. So it's a Wide Bay Regional Forum as such. And the situation is such that Mayor Jack Dempsey from Bundaberg tendered his resignation a few weeks back, and that resulted in Mayor Rachel Chambers from North Bennett, in her capacity as the elected deputy mayor, becoming by default the mayor in accordance with the Constitution. Sorry, becoming the chair in accordance with the Constitution. So as it stands at the moment, that Chair Chambers would continue in that role for the remainder of term. However, until such time as the next election of a chair. However, should she choose not to, then it will need to go to the floor for a vote, nominations and a vote on a new chair for that for WebRock. The deputy chair's position, of course, has become vacant now, and it will need. So WebRock will need to seek nominations for that, and then they'll need to obviously vote on the deputy chair. So what I'm proposing is that it's my view, and we had a robust conversation with WebRock last week. It is my view that our council, through myself and with the support of CEO Mark, we have a significant amount of experience for myself, both in terms of organisational restructuring from certainly my business experience, and with support of CEO Mark, he has a wealth of experience and capabilities in relation to corporate governance. It's my view that WebRock needs that strong, I suppose, capable leadership to move forward in terms of restructuring its operations over coming months and the next few years. So should Mayor Chambers decide to stay on, there'll be no issue, but should she not, I would be then looking to put my name forward as to be possibly nominated as chair of WebRock. So the recommendation is South Bennett Regional Council nominate Mayor Brett Otto for the position of WebRock chair, should nominations be called. Could we leave it at that, Mr. CEO? So do we have anyone that wants to move that? Thanks, Councillor Duff. Anyone happy to second? Thanks, Councillor Jones. Would any councillor like to ask any questions, speak for or against? Councillor Duff?
Just on that, just for clarification, like if, for example, you didn't win the mayoralty, like the chair, to be the chair, could you then, do we need to extend that to deputy as well? Like, or is that just a given?
Nominations would be called off the floor at the Rock, so the
Yeah, so
mayor,
that's just a given. I mean, if we support you to be the chair, we obviously support you to be the deputy. As I just wonder whether we need to clarify that in the wording, but you think it's all fine?
Yeah, no, the delegates, once they attend the Rock, actually, I don't recall bringing a nomination from, normal process for the Rock is they just call straight off the floor, so this is an extra added step for visibility for the council, so the deputy chair position will be filled off the floor from the delegates in attendance, so, yeah.
Right, okay. I'd probably just want to clarify there, Councillor Duff. For me, it's not necessarily me wanting to take on more work. Please don't get me wrong. But I do feel that for this council to be successful in achieving our objectives over this term of council, we need to have a strong Rock, and we need to, while WebRock is already established, I see that WebRock has two really, really important functions moving forward. One, by legislation, the mayors are required to participate in the Wide Bay Regional Mapping process, so developing the regional plan. So we've got no choice but to come together for that. That's a state requirement. And at a federal level, we know that the majority of funding does come from the federal government, and that the WebRock gives us an opportunity to advocate as a collective, and that can only benefit our region. If that advocacy is not coordinated and delivered well, our region could therefore obviously suffer detriment as a result of that. So for me, it's about making sure we've got a well-functioning Rock that is going to benefit the people of our region and is going to benefit the people of the entire Wide Bay region, in fact. But certainly wanting to perhaps put myself forward, so should nobody else be in a position to do so, I'd want to make sure that someone there is there to chair it, to move it forward. Okay, so that's the clarification. Did anyone want to speak against that motion? Any concerns around the table? Okay, Councillor Schumacher, yes?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I have given really careful consideration, and since the beginning of council, I've raised significant concerns about the dysfunction of WebRock and challenged on numerous occasions what value does it actually provide us here in the South Bennett. While I understand the need to collaborate for our neighbouring councils to advocate for our fair share of state and federal funding, since commencing this term of council, our involvement in WebRock has seen one saga after another. And I see for this organisation of councils to be effective, it has a giant task ahead of it in terms of resetting its strategic direction and delivering value for its members, South Bennett Regional Council included. I also note that at the recent Chamber of Commerce Business Breakfast here in Kingaroy, you announced that you were forming a new alliance which would bring Noosa, Gympie, Cherbourg, South Bennett, Somerset and Lockyer Valley councils together. And as you said, you believe this South Queensland Country Alliance of Mayors would help the South Bennett to forge strong links with councils from Noosa to Fernvale. I understand this relationship is still very much in its infancy. However, in the past 8 months in the Chamber, I've seen how much work this council has before it. And while I understand your interest and absolutely your experience, Mr. Mayor, I'm not convinced that being the chair of WebRock would actually pay dividends for the people of the South Bennett. Hence, after careful consideration, I'm not supportive of your nomination for the chairperson's role at this point in time, because I feel it will take you away from very important work that needs to be done here.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Schumacher, and I really appreciate those comments. I think they're really valid concerns you've raised. I certainly am in the process of negotiating with mayors from 4 regional council areas, including Gympie, Cherbourg, Somerset and Lockyer, such that we could potentially go back to our councils and have conversation with each of our councils and our senior executive teams about whether our organisations see value in forming a South East Queensland Country Alliance. That would be very much an informal alliance, so it would have no legislative. It would have no constitution. It had no constitution. It would have no formal structure. It would really just be to start conversations between the 5 councils as to how we could perhaps work collectively for joint outcomes. It might be that in 12 months' time that evolves into something that could be formalised, but we were wanting to just progress carefully. And so at this point in time, that is something that certainly is in planning stages, but would not proceed without obviously the support of each council and also of the senior executive team from each of those 5 councils. So certainly keen to progress that. I think there's real value in that for us. But at this point in time, my concern is that the capacity to advocate to the federal government around significant BBRF funding and so forth does require high-level strategic political advocacy, and that the 6 mayors from the Wide Bay, we have a collection of experienced, well-credentialed mayors with political, obviously, knowledge and connections, for want of a better term, and we're in a position as a group of mayors to be able to advocate fairly strongly, I believe, for the region. My concern is that if no one steps forward as the chair of the ROC, that it could well have a real serious, well, I don't know where the ROC will go. I really don't know what the answer will be. And then we could lose WebRock potentially altogether. I'm not sure where that will leave us in terms of advocacy, particularly where there's going to be a gap until such time as any new alliance that we might form is up and running, is effective, is able to sort of step into the role for us that WebRock has traditionally been playing. So I think it will be a process of transitioning through, and I'd be hoping to work very strategically, use the resources of WebRock, particularly the staff, more effectively, make WebRock an organisation that is much less, I suppose, operational and much more strategic in its focus. And so, you know, and I think the other mayors are quite concerned about the level of energy and time that goes into WebRock, dealing with matters that could be dealt with by individual councils. We don't have a Wide Bay Regional Council. We have six councils within the Wide Bay. It's up to those 6 councils to deliver on operational outcomes within their regions. It's up to WebRock to do that higher level strategic work, such that it doesn't then become another burden or another level of work for councils. So it should be less work and more high-level outcomes, and that's what I'm trying to achieve with it. Thank you. Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to support the nomination. I think that WebRock has been, over the in the past, regarded as a very powerful advocacy group, and then recently seems to have lost its way, but a lot of the criticism has been that it's been too much towards Bundaberg and Maryborough, and that we didn't, like our side, North Bennett and South Bennett, felt like they were left out. I think that this is a huge opportunity now to put it back on track, to start to and I know I've spoken to the Mayor about, you know, what a powerful opportunity to have the mayors all on board going and advocating, but particularly now, if we could have the chair, we're certainly not going to be left behind like we have felt in the past. So I'm really keen to. I don't think that the time spent on WebRock would be wasted or taken anything away from this. I think it would actually enhance what we do as a council, because then we've got, particularly if we can get all the mayors on board, some very, very strong WebRock moving forward and going to government for various things that we on our own, we're just left behind. So I just think if the Mayor can pull the mayors together and make it a powerful group, that it's really, really valuable time spent by our Mayor. So I'm very, very supportive of this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Duff. And I suppose just to clarify that, you know, in terms of the vision that I've got for WebRock is that it does move out of, you know, getting down into the weeds. We spend too much time going through detail, matters that could be handled by each individual council through their own staffing, operational issues. I'd much rather see the 6 mayors on a bus going into Parliament House, the 6 mayors on a plane going into Canberra to advocate for whatever they think is great for our region. And that might be a project that's great for the South Burnett that may benefit no other region. But the 6 mayors collaboratively get behind it and throw their weight behind it. That might be a project that supports Cherbourg or Gympie or Bundaberg or Fraser Coast. But we all come together to back each other, to support that project, to go to the federal government, to go to ministers at the federal and state level, to do that high-level strategic advocacy for in supporting each individual regional council. And that's really where I would like to see WebRock go, and I believe that there's an appetite for that amongst the mayors in the other councils as well. Right, any other council wish to speak? Otherwise, we'll go to the vote.
Yeah.
Councillor Jones, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I just want to endorse Councillor Duff's on the right track there. Just a quick summary of the last meeting that we went to, every mayor that's involved in Webrock all had similar opinion that Webrock, as Councillor Duff has identified, that performing very poorly at the moment. When it was first started, it was a very successful advocacy situation for our region, and I can't see any bad things coming from our mayor being the chair of Webrock moving forward. They all agreed that Webrock certainly needs a massive overhaul and a massive change. So I think we need to be involved, and perfect scenario would be to have our mayor in charge, in the chair, and exactly what the mayor's just said. All mayors were agreeing and agreeable to the fact that all the mayors should be together advocating for whatever's in the region, what's good for South Burnett, what's good for Bundaberg, all that sort of stuff. And the reality is Bundaberg and Fraser Coast can do it on their own. They don't need Webrock, if you want to be really honest. We do need Webrock. We need the signatures and the support of Bundaberg and Fraser Coast, simply because we're a small regional council. And if we go to Canberra and advocate and we've got Bundaberg and Fraser Coast supporting us, I think it's only a good thing. And I'll give you an example. The Far North Queensland Rock, they're down in Canberra all the time with all their mayors out of that rock area up there, and they do successful things. So what the mayor's suggesting, I think, is a good thing for our region. And I think if he was successful in gaining the position of the chair, I think it's only a bonus for our region.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. You've done a really good job of summarising, I think, where Webrock's at the moment and the potential it has for the future for our region. So well said, thank you. Councillor Potter?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, look, I really support this because I'm on 2 Webrock committees, and without Webrock, our last RADF application, we wouldn't have got that extra funding to get the extra person to sort of help us in our area. So look, for me, Webrock has been fantastic, and I really support this application, so thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Okay, all those councillors in favour? Those in favour? Okay, those against? Okay, we have 6-1 with Councillor Schumacher voting against. Thank you all. Okay, now we'll move on to 9.2 at 66, which is delegations to the CEO under the Local Government Regulation 2012. And the recommendation is that pursuant to Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009, Council delegate the exercise of the powers contained in Schedule 1 of the Instrument of Delegation attached to this resolution as appendix to the CEO. These powers must be exercised subject to any limitations contained in Schedule 2 of the attached Instrument of Delegation, and repeal all prior resolutions delegating the same powers to the CEO. Mr. CEO, did you want to add any commentary to this before we proceed?
Very little, Mayor. It's an update with the recent changes to the legislation that have come through our legal provider to tidy up. So,
thanks, Mr. CEO. Do we have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Fryloff, a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Potter. Speakers for, against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 9.3 at 76. Notice to repeal South Bennett Regional Council resolutions, minute numbers 1732, 2080 and 2077. Mr. CEO, I might call on you just to speak to this matter quickly as well before we go to the floor. Thank you.
thanks, Mr. Mayor. This one was one of the ones that we brought to the Standing Committee, so it was for consideration. We are going through and reviewing pretty much the entire policy database to bring them all up to I was going to say modern standard for want of a better term, but to tidy them up, legislative change. These 3 policies that were presented have been incorporated into other documents. So they've been adopted by Council in the past, many years ago. So it needs a Council resolution to remove them. And as they've been, repeating myself, but they've been folded into other documents. So when staff are looking for information, it's a consolidation and updating of information. Easier to find.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. The recommendation is that in accordance with Section 262 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the following resolutions be repealed. Item 9.2.1 of the General Meeting held on 27 May 2009, HR 50814, Employee Assistance Program Policy, minute number 1732. Item 9.2.2 of the General Meeting held on 29 July 2009, HR 63362, exit interview policy, minute number 2080, and item 9.2.1 of the general meeting held on 29 July 2009, HR 533519, corporate rehabilitation policy, minute number 2077. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Fryloff. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Speak for or against? No. Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 9.4, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Standing Committees and Terms of Reference Policies for Community, Executive and Finance and Corporate at 83. And the recommendation here is that Council adopt the following standing committee structure pursuant to Section 264 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, infrastructure, community, and thirdly, executive and finance and corporate, and that Council adopt the following terms of references as presented. South Bennett Regional Council Community Standing Committee Terms of Reference, Statutory 026, South Bennett Regional Council Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee Terms of Reference, Statutory 027. And Mr. CEO, did you want to add any commentary before we go to the floor? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The last month has been the first trial run of these committees. What we found was there was a little bit of imbalance in the agenda load with executive and community and finance and corporate. This will continue to align the portfolios and the departments and the meeting reporting. So we would have two councillors reporting at infrastructure, four in a little piece that we still have to sort at community, and then two at executive and finance. So it brings the functions together. So the first month was really good as far as feedback and understanding the sorts of issues that will come to each standing committee, and this is just a refinement. We will bring during December the meeting dates for next year. So if councillors recall, we only set the dates for these up until the 30th of December or 31st of December while we felt our way with it a little bit. Also the reporting, the agenda reports, getting the format, so not only the portfolio reports, but then all the information reports behind them, which we've been working on. So a lot more information will be put out into the public domain, a lot more data, which will be tabled for information so people can see at those meetings. But yeah, this is literally just to refine it a little bit and balance out the agenda load between the different committees.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, so we have the motion there. Do we have a move for such? Thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Seconder. Thanks, Councillor Henson. Speakers for or against? Those Councillor Schumacher. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge how much I am really enjoying the new system and the new process. I think it's really enabled us to have a lot more thorough conversations in those committee meetings, and I just really look forward to where we go from here. It's been a great start, and I just think it gives us more time to really concentrate on the issues and get us up out of the weeds. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. A very good observation. Of course, it's important to acknowledge the work that's been undertaken by our CEO and his senior executive team in being able to pull together these standing committees where there was much, I suppose, conversation throughout the community over recent, probably the last 12 months in relation to desire to see council more open and transparent. And we know, of course, that the government has moved with the Belcara reforms to make that one of their priorities as well, to open council meetings up to more public viewing. And it also helps to, I suppose, provide better explanation to the community about why council makes the decisions that it takes. So it's very informative, and the standing committees so far, I would agree, have been a breath of fresh air. We're working through the process. We're not perfect with them yet, but we'll get better as we go in terms of fine-tuning the process. Thank you, Mr. CEO, and your senior executive team for excellent work in bringing that together for us. Okay, so where are we at? Are we voting on this now? Are we? Okay, those in favour? Lost my way there. Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Okie doke. Right, well, we'll move on to item 9.5, which is at 94, adoption of South Bennett Regional Council conduct of council and committee meetings policy. So just a bit of a background here from the officers. A good governance approach congruent with ethical, accountable and transparent decision-making is a mandate of Council. The purpose of this policy is to establish protocol for the proper and orderly conduct of Council meetings, including standing and advisory committee meetings. This policy has been developed in accordance with the obligations of local government as provided for in the Local Government Act 2009 and Local Government Regulation 2012 and applies to all Council representatives, Council committee members, invited guests, media representatives and the general public. Now, the officer's recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council Conduct of Council and Committee Meetings Policy, Statutory 017, be adopted as presented. Before we go to the floor, Mr. CEO, did you want to clarify anything in relation to this policy?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this one was brought last month. If you recall, the legislation came into effect, I think it was 12th of October, and our general was the 14th, if my dates are correct. The published standing orders from the state had literally only just come out, and we were scrambling. So we were probably right at the front end of trying to change it. The policy has been changed particularly to reflect the legislated changes, so it's folded in. So the new standing orders from the state was they'd rendered them back a bit. So we've kept the basis of our previous policy, and we will be looking forward just to working through the document afterwards to the councillors to ensure significant change. For example, is the straight cut and paste of the state prescribed conflict of interest and declarable interest. So how to deal with those at the meeting. So today this brings us up to spec with the current regulation, and then the rest of it is just our normal meeting procedure, audiovisual. A lot of it hasn't been changed, but the bits that have been changed have been brought about to reflect the new regulations and the changes to the Act.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So the recommendation is that Council adopt the Council and Committee Meetings Policy, Statutory 017, as presented. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Seconder, thanks, Councillor Froloff. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 9.6 can be found at 126, and it's Council's Defence Service Policy, Statutory 013, and this was presented at the Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting held on the 8th of November 2020, and the officer's recommendation is that it was recommended this be put. The committee recommended to Council that the South Bennett Regional Council Defence Service Policy, Statutory 013, be adopted as presented. Mr. CEO, any clarification on that before we go to the motion?
Not in the content of the policy. It was happy to take, as always, questions on it. It was discussed at the Standing Committee. The one thing I would point out is Council will notice as the Standing Committees, and this is the closing of the loop. So information reports generated, goes to a Standing Committee, it's discussed. The Standing Committee doesn't carry the delegation to make the final decision. The General Meeting carries that authority. So the committee recommends to Council, and then it's up to Council. So Council can do with the resolution as any report as it chooses off the floor, but it closes the loop. So all those matters that went to the November Standing Committee are brought forward. The ones that required action and weren't for information are brought forward to this General Meeting. They get dealt with, then they become a resolution of Council and they go off and be enacted. The information reports are received for information. The Standing Committees will then deal with their minutes to ensure that they're true and correct record, and then the minutes from the November Standing Committees will go to the December General just for receival. So it's a full process as far as we're in the early stages, so this is the first stage. The minutes will come to the December General, and you'll see there's all through this agenda, there's recommendations from the committee to the General, and then Council will deal with it as it would a normal resolution.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So just clarifying there that Standing Committees make recommendations to Council. Ordinary meetings of Council on the last Wednesday of each month are normally the decision-taking point at which resolutions are then passed. There is an opportunity, though, even though recommendations have come through Standing Committees, for that motion to be changed if councillors find that they're then uncomfortable at that decision-taking point. So the recommendation is that South Bennett Regional Council Defence Service Policy, Statutory 013, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Seconder, thanks, Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 9.7 at 131 is adoption of Council's trading on local government controlled areas, facilities and roads policy, Statutory 023. Let's go to 131. And the information here is that what presented to the Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting on 18 November was adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council trading on local government controlled areas, facilities and roads policy. And the recommendation from the Standing Committee was the South Bennett Regional Council trading on local government controlled areas, facilities and roads policy, Statutory 023 be adopted as presented. Again, in terms of the officer's report, Mr CEO, anything that you wanted to clarify there?
Not for me, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Okay, well, this matter has been discussed and recommended by the Standing Committee. We have a mover for that motion. Thanks, Councillor Potter. Second, thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 9.8, adoption of Council's workplace health and safety policy, Statutory 015 at 136. Again, this came through the Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting in November, and there's a recommendation from that committee that Council adopt the workplace health and safety policy. So as such, the recommendation is that South Bennett Regional Council workplace health and safety policy, Statutory 015, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Yep, thanks, Councillor Henson. Second, thanks, Councillor Potter. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 9.9, adoption of Council's discovery, handling and management of human remains policy, Statutory 016 at 139. Again, this was discussed and debated at Council's Standing Committee, Finance and Corporate Standing Committee in November, and the committee recommended to Council that the policy be adopted. So as such, the officer's recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Council discovery, handling and management of human remains policy, Statutory 016, be adopted as presented. I'll have a mover. Thanks, Councillor Potter. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Speakers, those for? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, now we're moving now on to 9.10, which is adoption of the South Bennett Regional Councillor Conduct Complaints Investigation Policy. I had a bit of trouble getting my mouth around that one. So it's at 143. Okay, so this one again has been through the Standing Committee meeting in November, and the committee recommends to Council that the policy be adopted as presented. So as such, the officer's recommendation is that the South Bennett Regional Councillor Conduct Complaints Investigation Policy, Statutory 028, be adopted as presented. Mr CEO, before I go to the floor, any commentary on this one?
Again, Mr Mayor, legislative, just refresh to ensure it's in compliance with the legislative change. The most significant change, well, I won't say the only change, but the one is previously under the legislation we were compelled to go to the Complaints Conduct Tribunal. The Office of the Independent Assessor now has sent out a recommended list of various investigators, so we now have greater flexibility in who we engage to do the investigation, which will allow the tribunal has a significant backlog, which is, depending on your perspective, a good thing or not. So it allows for a more timely, and it's been recognised through the OIA, to allow a more timely approach for councils to engage a set of pre-qualified suppliers, for want of a better term.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter. Second, thank you, Councillor Duff. Speakers for or against? Okay, those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 9.11 is the monthly financial report at 150, and the report was tabled. I think this one was tabled. Did we have this tabled? No, it hasn't been tabled yet. Okay, so the monthly financial report is presented here in the agenda, and it's the interim October 2020 report, and the officer's recommendation is that the monthly financial report, including capital works and works for Queensland, as at 31 October 2020, be received and noted. The report has been there. I believe councillors have had time to work through that, read its contents. So I'll go to the floor. Do we have a mover for such? Thanks, Councillor Potter. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Jones. Right, councillors, speakers for or against, questions in relation to the contents of the report? Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a couple of questions about the statement of financial position, if that's all right through you. I just wanted to check, I just noticed our total current assets has, compared to the original budget, is currently sitting at 53 million versus the original budget of 49 million. And our total assets has dropped from 918 to 951. So I just wanted a little bit of commentary about that. My other concern also was just around the total current liabilities. I see for the year we've budgeted 14 million, but as at October 2020, it looks like there's 11 million that's been committed to current liabilities. So I just wanted to check a couple of those things, how we're tracking in that sense. It's on page 163.
So Councillor, you're questioning there the total community equity there, down there. I'm assuming here it's because of the sale of assets would have affected this in the liability.
General
Liabilities.
Manager, yeah, just while you're just reviewing
Sorry?
that, I think just a couple of points there. Councillor Schumacher, we've cash and cash equivalents is a little bit higher than we expected. And I think it's probably because we've had a reasonably good response to our rates notices that have gone out. So I think that extra 2 million there in current assets is primarily around those additional rates. There is a little bit more in trade and other receivables. So that's our debtors, money that's owed to council for the other quantity of outstanding rates and perhaps other grants, I would imagine, or funding, Susan. The other thing is that property plant, when you go to total assets being down, it seems that the majority of that is in property plant equipment, which at the moment is 854 million compared to budget being set at 891 million. So I'd imagine there's an explanation for that. And then the third element of your question was current liabilities at 11.3 million, original budget 14.8. The amended budget at 14.6. So that seems to be, looking at the numbers there, Susan, mainly around accounts payable are low compared to budgeted. Yeah. And other liabilities are only 500,000 compared to budgeted at 2 million. So that's probably a good thing in that our liabilities are less than we thought they'd be. But did you want to take some time, take that on notice, General Manager, and report back to the next
Thanks,
standing
Mr.
committee
Mayor.
meeting?
Thank you.
Yeah. Are you happy with that, Councillor Schumacher? Yep. Thanks, General Manager. So, General Manager Jarvis will report back to the next Executive Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting with the answers to your questions. Excellent questions. Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Just a question through you, Mr. Mayor, just on wanting to know with our capital projects, also our Works for Queensland and our drought projects, are they all on track to be completed? I know we had extensions of time with the drought funding. Works for Queensland has got to be completed by, I believe, 30th of June. Then we've got the capital works. I'm just wondering how we're travelling as far as getting all those projects completed on time.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Duff. So 152, at the bottom of page 152, there's a summary there that the amended capital budget was approximately 38.4 million. We had WIP carried over of 7.3, so there's 45.8 million in capital budget for this current financial year. So far, we've spent 15.1 million, which is 33%. So that's a third. And where are we? End of October. That's 4 months. So I believe that's a third of the year. So superficially looking at that, it looks as though from a financial perspective, we're on track. As an accountant, I'd say we're on track. We're a third in and we're a third spent. So, General Managers, did any General Manager want to comment on that? Some feedback? We might go to General Manager O'May first and then we'll come to General Manager Meehan. Thank you.
Yeah, I might take that. So, yeah, we did go through these last week, and we'll be providing those updates in the standing committee meetings, the full status of those projects. Works for Queensland, basically, I think, are on track for the 30 June next year completion. Number of those to roll out in quarter 3 and quarter 4. And the Drought Communities program, we have got a number we identified about 3 or 4 projects that will run into next year that we are getting a variation, which to see them through to 30th of June. Something like Blackbutt Shelter Shed held up with the Ergon line across it. The rural resilience, rural support initiatives, which by Edo assisting, working with Council, that will run through next year, was held up with COVID and the inability for the drought officer to visit farm to farm. So they're naturally being extended through to 30 June. But yeah, we don't see any issues beyond completion by 30 June next year for both projects.
Can I just add, Councillor Duff, that in terms of our capital expenditure program, we have a target of 95%. So we were hoping to get down to a fairly low level, the amount of WIP that you have to carry over. We may not get to 95%, but we're working hard to get there. We may get to 90%. I think I'd be happy if we did. But that's our target nonetheless. General Manager Jarvis, did you want to add?
Sorry, yeah, just to clarify that for you, Councillor. The round 3 works for Queensland. You'll see there in the report that the total budget is 4.5 million, with 5.2 million actuals and 152,000 committed. So out of the eligible 4.374 million, 826,000 is funded by Council. So that's nearly that's completed. And with the round 4, your total budget is 3.31 million there. Your actuals 237,000. With 405,000 committed, but that's only with 5 projects started. So that's a new program now.
Thanks, General Manager. And of course, this matter will be, we'll continue to monitor this, and I'm sure we'll get an update on the capital budget, including the W4Q, the Commonwealth Drought Program funding, as well as the Roads to Recovery funding from the General Managers at the next Finance, Infrastructure and Finance Standing Committee meetings, as well as communities. Okay, General Manager Meehan, did you want to add anything to that in terms of your capital works?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, as far as we're aware, the Drought Community Program is on track at this stage. The only delay that I'm aware of that we've had at this stage is obviously negotiating some of the vegetation issues in Cumbia, but I believe that's being resolved as imminently. So provided we don't have a weather event, I'm not aware of any changes at this stage.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Duff, you comfortable with those responses?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, now we have the monthly financial report presented. The motion is on the table, moved by Councillor Potter and seconded by Councillor Jones. So those in favour? Okay, so a resolution passed unanimously. The report has been accepted by Council. 9.12 is the Queensland Audit Office, a final management report for South Bennett Regional Council. It's at 199. A little bit of background is that the audit, annual audit, is undertaken by KPMG. It then goes to the Queensland Audit Office, and the Queensland Audit Office have completed their review of such, and the Auditor General has issued an unmodified audit opinion on the financial statements. And so as such, the officer's recommendation is that, subject to section 213 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the Auditor General has presented to the Mayor of the South Bennett Regional Council a copy of the Auditor General's observation report about an audit of the South Bennett's financial statements. That includes observations and suggestions made about issues arising out of the audit for adoption. Further, that Council adopt the final management report as presented. Mr. CEO, General Manager Jarvis, did you want to add any commentary around the observations and suggestions from the QAO? It's my understanding that we received what I would often term as an unqualified audit report. So we, just for the community and for Council, we did very well with our audit, and I think we're actually progressed to a better position than we were in last year. But did you just want to add some commentary to that?
Absolutely.
Thank you, General Manager.
Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this, yes, we have been issued here with an unmodified audit. and there was no significant deficiencies identified. And this audit, I believe, is one of the better ones I've seen, and I would like to acknowledge the finance team. They're a wonderful bunch of professionals, very qualified, and I think they're a real asset and a credit to this council, and I'd like to acknowledge my team, duly led by Manager Selena, and by producing such a wonderful audit report. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. CEO.
No, it was well said by the General Manager. Unqualified audit. We've ticked off some old issues. Part of the reason for tabling these reports in open council is it's part of the checks and balances of the system. So councils are fully aware of any deficiencies in the system that the audit picked up. And certainly we've very pleased with the audit and the unmodified nature of the statement, and would acknowledge also very much the finance staff, but all the staff across the departments that contributed to the audit as they go through everything from the Councillor's Register of Interest through all the statutory requirements to governance to policies to, she's a fairly comprehensive old show over a long period of time. So, yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. And of course, there's full public disclosure on the final management report from the QAO. It's included in the agenda. It's on Council's website, so you can see the letter along with all of the contents of the report from the QAO, which identifies the internal control issues and a few other matters there. So not much to read, but there's a few things there to do and a little bit more work to do, and hopefully next year we'll be in a better position, an even better position again. Right, okay, so we'll have to seek, I think I have to seek a mover and a seconder, don't I? So thanks, Councillor Jones. Moved by Councillor Jones, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Thank you. For or against? No one speaking? Okay, so those in favour? Thank you all. Resolution passed unanimously. Right, on to 9.13, which is a rate, exemptions and remission. Additions to approved list, assessment number 20756, followed by about 9 zeros at 208. So not quite sure how to pronounce all of those zeros. So at 208, this item is such that Council has received a request for a rate exemption from the director of a local community organisation that has recently purchased property associated with that assessment number 20756. In their letter, the community organisation state that they are a not-for-profit company, limited by guarantee, and they are an organisation that provides a public service or community benefit. The organisation is also tax exempt. The letter also states that the property is being held for a similar purpose to the previous owner, who was also a not-for-profit, but was wound up. The organisation aims to retain, maintain, secure and preserve the building located on the property and to promote the historical aspects of the property to tourist organisations. It will also be made available to community organisations at no or minimal cost. So look, all the details there. We do have council policy around this, but the recommendation is that council agree to provide a rate remission for assessment number 2056, effective from 1 July 2020, for 100% of the general rates, 100% of the separate rates and charges, and 100% of the water access and wastewater access charges, in line with similar community organisations. Now, Mr. CEO, did you want to clarify anything? Have I provided enough information on this?
That's a good summary, Mr. Mayor. It's a request that comes through, and it's up to council to agree or disagree by resolution. The recommendation is that it's agreed to because the applicant has basically ticked the boxes of the policy.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So we have a policy. The applicant has been able to demonstrate that they meet the criteria outlined in that policy for the rates remissions recommended. So do we have a mover for such? Thanks, Councillor Duff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Does any councillor have any questions or wish to speak for or against the motion? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Okay, now it's just gone 10 o'clock. We're about to move on to item 10.1, which is the Kingaroy Transformation Project. I would therefore move, it's a procedural motion that we, do we adjourn the meeting for morning tea, Mr. CEO? I always get confused about closing, adjourning, laying on the table, whatever else you do in meetings. So I'll move that we adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes and that we reconvene at 10:15. Have a seconder for such. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Everyone in favour of morning tea? Thank you. We'll see you all back here at 10:15. Okay, I'll now welcome back everybody, and I'll now move that we reopen the meeting at 10:25. Do we have a seconder for that? Thanks, Councillor Schumacher, and of course, councillors in favour. We're opening the meeting. So we're now at item 10.1 on the agenda, which can be found at 211. And just a little bit of a summary here. So the Kingaroy Transformation Project is a joint funded project under the Building Better Regions Fund between the Australian Government and South Bennett Regional Council. Through design and future planning, the project will be a once-in-a-generation project to enable community activation and economic regeneration by delivering human, social and economic enabling infrastructure. Now, the Kingaroy Transformation Project includes a key aspect of strategically timed asset renewal works, whose main purpose is to address the existing condition of the CBD's aged assets. These critical rehabilitation and renewal works look to repair and replace and rejuvenate all assets within the road corridor. So what we're referring to there is what I often refer to as the foundations. So we're talking about road pavement, road sealing, footpath pavement and completion, rehabilitation, and of course then there are underground works in relation to water and sewerage. So they are components of the critical rehabilitation and renewal works that would have to be done at some point in time nonetheless. So that's a little bit of background in terms of the project, its funding source and its objectives. Now we do have a recommendation at hand which is supported by a comprehensive report from the officers and which go through to page 254 of the agenda and includes a budget summary along with some additional costings. There are bullet points there on page 212 in relation to those. There is also a summary of the community consultation that has been undertaken around this over a long period of time and the objectives of such. So there's a report on that. There's a project overview and scope, and there's a BBRF agreement and scope detailed. Design themes including images along with narrative to support those images. There's a summary of total costs at different stages outlined. So there's a large body of information contained in this report that's now coming to Council. So the recommendation is in the agenda. It has 4 elements to it. And I really probably at this stage, this is a very significant matter, a significant strategic, I suppose, initiative for our council in terms of developing our region. And I'd like to, I suppose, put it to the floor as how you'd like to proceed in relation to this officer's recommendation. Now, I've had that conversation with CEO Mark and we've agreed that that's the way we would roll with this one. Now, Councillor Schumacher, you've got your light on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been through the design and the report, the comprehensive report, and it's my view that this project comes with a high degree of risk and uncertainty. I believe Council needs more information to make this decision. I'd like to move a procedural motion off the floor that the matter lay on the table until the December ordinary meeting, noting that the project will go ahead and that the groundbreaking ceremony can proceed on the 14th of December. I'm not confident in the project costs before us and believe that Council needs the third-party review currently being undertaken to quantify the project costs and ensure that the scope will be completed to the standard required within the revised budget of 13.6 million. I need confidence in the numbers and I'm just not there yet.
Councillor Schumacher, so what you're putting forward is a procedural motion.
Yes, that's
And a
correct.
procedural motion doesn't give one the opportunity to debate under our standing orders. So I would simply get you to state the motion. I do need to clarify that it's actually to adjourn the matter.
To adjourn the matter.
So if you could perhaps just go back, read your motion concisely, and then we'll seek a seconder on that.
I'd like to move a procedural motion that council adjourn the matter until the December ordinary meeting, noting that the project will go ahead and that the groundbreaking ceremony can proceed on the 14th of December.
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Right, do we have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Duff has seconded that procedural motion. Now, there is no debate on procedural motions, so as such, we'll just go straight to the vote. So the motion's at hand. Does anyone want clarification before we vote? Is it clear what's being proposed? Okay, then those in favour? Those against? Okay, the motion has been defeated. The procedural motion has been defeated, 4 votes to 3, with in favour Councillor Potter, Councillor Jones, Councillor Froelich and Councillor Henschen, against, against Linnell, been defeated, 4-3. I think you've got did you get the boxes ticked? Right. Do I need to read that out? So against were Councillor Jones, Councillor Froelich, Councillor Potter and Councillor Henschen. No, that's against, Linnell. Sorry, Linnell. Yeah, now, Linnell, you're in reverse, and the reason you are because I told you the wrong thing. That's my fault. I confused you, sorry. So the motion procedural motion that the matter be deferred to December has been defeated. 4 votes to 3. So now, other councillors. Does any other councillor, how do we want to proceed with this? Otherwise, I'll go straight to the officer's recommendation. Councillor Jones?
Mr Mayor, I'll stand corrected here, but I would like to move an amendment to the resolution that's currently there. Am I able to do that now?
Councillor Jones, we did put the original motion up first.
If you put the recommendation, are you amending it or adding or subtracting from it or
I
what?
will probably by just changing a couple of things and adding to it.
So if the councillor moves what's on the table and then we get a seconder for that, and then Mr Mayor, if you ask the councillor for his amendment.
Yeah. So Councillor Jones, I'll just ask you to read the officer's recommendation and to move that. And then if we get a seconder on that, we can then come back to you to amend that original motion.
Officer's recommendation that council in regards to Kingaroy Transformation Project 1, adopt the design in principle for construction as presented in attachment 2. 2, approve the project and the proposed budget at 13.6 million with the additional budget to be allocated from additional funding sources or restricted cash with any budget amendments to be approved through the quarterly review process. 3, delegate to the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate infrastructure contributions from other agencies for complementary works. And 4, council proceed with the groundbreaking ceremony for the project on Monday, 14th of December 2020.
Jones, are you moving that motion?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Froelich. Right. Now, first of all, can we have some debate on the original motion, Mr CEO, before we move to amend? Okay. I'm going to open the floor for those that wish to speak for or against the motion before we go to any proposed amendments. Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I unashamedly have high expectations. This project has been decades in the making. It's hugely important to me and the people of Division 4 who I represent. I'm fully supportive and love the concept and the plan before us. However, while it may be a once-in-a-lifetime kind of project for our region, I fear it could haunt this council for a lifetime, being that every one of the $9.1 million requested today are ratepayer funds, and that these funds must come out of 3 consecutive council budgets. I feel in the best interest of the public, it is our role as councillors to challenge the overspend and ask the tough questions. For me, I need the confidence that the project scope and plans are within our means and will not shift any potential financial impost or burden to our ratepayers. While I would much rather go into the project with all of the funds that we need to do the job properly, I do not have the confidence in the estimate before us and will need more information before I can make this decision. The facts are, I'm concerned our actuals and committed costs for this project, as per the monthly financial report, show we have spent or committed over $930K without even turning a sod yet. I'm concerned our council is in deficit. I know firsthand from my first day we as councillors were told we are in the hole, and we are constantly reminded of our financial constraints. I'm concerned that council currently has, at the 31st of October, $32 million of borrowings on our balance sheet. I'm concerned that the heightened levels of depreciation across council's extensive asset portfolio is crippling us. I'm concerned that QTC require council to have 3 months of operating expenses available in our cash reserves, and I need the assurance that this budget is solid, that there will be no more blowouts, that the additional funding requested today will not impact our council's financial sustainability into the long term. I'm concerned, as it seems, we may be experiencing some scope creep. And while I love the lighting and the varied design elements, I'm concerned that we may have gotten carried away with the bells and whistles, and that our focus should be on funding the core aspects of the critical renewals first. I'm concerned that we have high levels of socioeconomic disadvantage in our region. Our rates are high, and I do believe we cannot continue to go to our ratepayers asking for more. I need the reassurance that should we approve the additional funding, that this will not be the case. I'm concerned about the ongoing operational costs of this project post-construction and need the reassurance that we can afford to maintain what we build to the standards the people of Kingaroy and our region deserve and pay for. I'm concerned the contingency of $500,000 is not enough for a project of this calibre, that the numbers before us are rubbery, and that we as councillors are yet to receive the external review currently being undertaken by a third party to confirm these costs. I've been advised this report is expected to be received by the end of the month, and I see it would be irresponsible of me to make a decision without assurance that what we are approving today is achievable and within the budget set. I'm also concerned that the report before us states that the negotiations with DTMR and Ergon are still ongoing, and that the estimated contributions of $2.3 million are in addition to the $13.6 million. My concern is that if DTMR and Ergon do not contribute this amount in its entirety, that we may be left with council to fund this shortfall. Put simply, I'm concerned because I believe we cannot spend money that we don't have. I'm not here to get carried away in the argument of what each of our respective towns get. I absolutely believe it is Kingaroy's turn, that our town is tired, and that this project is a game changer, not just for Kingaroy, but for our region. However, since its early inception, what we ratepayers are spending on this project has grown from the initial preliminary discussions of an $8 million project to a $9 million project to an $11 million project to now revised budget of $13.6 million, which includes a $9.1 million contribution from Council from restricted cash and additional funding sources not defined or provided in the report before us. It's my view Council must deal with the facts before it, and to suggest that alternate funding may be forthcoming is equivalent of buying the $1 million home because you may win the lotto. For me, I've got to have confidence in the numbers and our ability to deliver on this budget, and I'm just not there yet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you, Councillor Schumacher. No one else wishes to speak? Okay, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can agree with Councillor Schumacher and the feelings of every ratepayer in the South Bennett, because I'd be first to admit that I was rather sceptical of this project some years ago when it was first tabled. It's been in the making for a long time. I would like to say that since being in council, I have every bit of respect and confidence in our general managers and the people behind the scenes. If it's gone from 8 million to 9 million to 11 million, and this is a game changer and it's a bit of a once in a lifetime thing, if we procrastinate about this for any longer, the next time we're at this table it'll be 15 million, it'll be 17 million. They've done an enormous amount of work on this, and the positivity within the streetscape and the local community and business houses I've seen and heard firsthand, not from just the councillors but from business people, has been nothing but positive. I think we grab this by the throat and we run with it. Council's in a position where this is going to be a project that takes 2 years in the making. 2 years. We've got to get this right. I did make comment, I don't want to stand here in December 2022 and say, I wish we would have done that. I think it's a credit to the guys behind the scene in each department that's doing this. I'm fully supportive of it, and I think Council and this new Council has ways and means, and we've shown that already, ways and means of funding this project and getting it right. So I fully support and would love to see this and be on the date proposed to break new ground in December, to have that meeting and for it to forge ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Henson. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We need a project to invigorate our economy, something that will instill confidence in our local businesses and the wider community. This is exactly what the Kingaroy Transformation Project does. The Kingaroy Transformation Project not only creates an identity, but also recognises everyone in the South Bennett and the importance of having linkages to the whole area by creating tourism opportunities, and not just in Kingaroy, but our whole region. This project will help us attract and keep people, not only our own locals, but also people we need in our region. Professionals from health, business and tourism areas, bringing with them new business and growing our economy. The Kingaroy Transformation Project will create jobs, and not only during the project, but after the project is finalised. This allows all people with dreams and aspirations of owning businesses in Kingaroy to come and follow their dreams, because ours will be the community of choice. Imagine that. This is the project that will help keep your kids here and make them decide to stay in our region, and all for the ones going on to further studies elsewhere, it will have them wanting to come back. They do not want to come back at the moment. We are tired. We need them to come back. The lights are our point of difference, and I believe the lights will aid with help to help with safety and security of the area, not to mention the potential community activation. Pink Up Your Town, Relay for Life, Bacon Fest, mental health, and dare I say, state of origin. These are just to name a few, but just thinking about this and the potential is incredible. The Kingaroy Transformation Project will activate our community and improve our way of life and give us our own identity. It will be a safe place for families both day and night. The Kingaroy Transformation Project is what the people of Kingaroy need, and it will benefit the whole South Bennett. Imagine the laughter and smile on a child's face as they are watching, interacting with the lights at night. Equality for all people and all needs is highly important. The Kingaroy Transformation Project will create this inclusiveness and access for all. More disability and easy access parking for our community. For some, this is a necessity, therefore making it a necessity for us to include. Creating a safer and more inviting place for everyone. This is a once-in-a-generation project, and changes have been made to ensure we have provisions for everyone, therefore making it an inclusive project, and in the process making the quality of life better for all and becoming the community of choice for all. Kingaroy Transformation Project will give us back community, safety, inclusiveness and family-friendly spaces for all of us. The Kingaroy Transformation Project will inspire our current generation while building for our next generation. Kingaroy Transformation is a project that has been on the books and talked about for over 20 years. This is a big moment in history for the South Bennett, and this is the moment for Kingaroy. The time is now. There has been significant spend in many other major towns in the region, and Kingaroy is in dire need of investment. The people in Kingaroy want this project. I want this project for all of us and for all future generations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I agree with what Councillor Potter has said. I agree with Councillor Schumacher, Councillor Henson. I think everybody wants to see the transformation of Kingaroy, including the wider region. And we all agreed to it. I put my hand up for it. We went to the table with a recommendation that we borrowed money, and I know there was pushback from the community that we borrowed money for this transformation project to match the Building Better Regions funding, and we said that a lot of those part of that project was to do work that would be already under the ground, work that we would have to do in any case. So I sold it to the community. I had everybody convinced. Merg and all the people who don't like things happening in Kingaroy, I had them convinced. Everyone agrees right across the region that Kingaroy's tight. So I'm not arguing that. But what I am arguing is along the same lines as Councillor Schumacher. When you have a budget and you go to the community and say, this is what we can spend, and now we're going to go out and do some community consultation, and everybody's going to put 1,000 things on a whiteboard and say, yeah, this is what we want, this is what we want. But when you've got a budget, it's the responsibility of, I believe, our council to say, well, this is the amount of money we've got. What's your priorities? Because over and above that, we don't have that money. So no, I haven't seen that come to the table. I haven't seen where 11.1 million has been costed, and now there's an extra 2.5 that we suddenly need for something else. I'm not 100% sure what that actually looks like. I've been told, you know, it's this and it's that. But when do we come to the table with a balanced budget, saying that this is what we can afford, and this is luxury, and maybe we might say, okay, we think it's worth an extra 2.5. I'm not 100%, I'm not convinced of that. I'm also concerned about the 2.3 from Ergon and main roads, that has not been bedded down. What's going to happen then when it comes back to the table and they say, well, Ergon and main roads have decided not to fund that? That's another 2.3. Like, I know this is a once in a generation, a once in a lifetime project, but all of our projects are. The Kingaroy wastewater treatment plant was 26 million. We've got the swimming pool, the Kingaroy swimming pool. It's going to be, I think we've talked about $10, $11 million to do that. So all of these projects, these are decision-making projects that we, in our lifetime, will only make once. So to say this is a once-in-a-lifetime project it's right, but it's not the only lifetime projects that we're going to be making. We have a whole gambit of things that we want to do, and that includes in Kingaroy. We've talked about doing something with mental health. What about Memorial Park? We want to do a whole open space plan on Memorial Park. Apex Park, there's a whole bucket load of things that we want to do aside from this transformation project. We want to do our town entrances into Kingaroy. That's not included in the scope of this project. So it goes down some of the streets, but it's not the whole of what we want to do for Kingaroy. So I am very, very concerned about a $2.5 million overspend and also $2.3 million of Ergon and main roads that has not been included or really talked about, in the fact that we may not even get that money. So then it turns into like a $16 million project. I'm concerned, as I think we all are, about we're already running a tight budget. I think we have a responsibility to our ratepayers to keep this within budget. I would like to see the engineers come back to the table with a balanced budget, a design that fits the scope of what we actually borrowed and got back from Building Better Regions. And then I think it would be a good news story that and this is before we've even turned a sod, and I agree with Councillor Schumacher, 500,000 to me is nowhere near what we need as a contingency for a project of this scope. And so then you've got every other project that we've ever done has always blown out. So this is before we've turned a sod. We've asked for 2.5 million and a 2.3 that we're not sure about. So I'm 100% supportive of doing something for Kingaroy, but I'm just scared about where this is going to land. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. All right, any other councillor? Councillor Freiloff.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Duff, can I just put you back to Mergen footpaths? The Mergen footpath started at 250,000 and now is out 2.1 million. And that's, so you're talking about blowouts. There was a massive one down at Mergen, but you never balked to where we were going to find that money. So I think we had to find a bit more than that, but we did find that money for Mergen. So I believe that this is a good project and it needs to be done.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Frolov, I'll just caution Councillor Duff about interjecting when other councillors are speaking. Thank you. Councillor Jones, you'll get the right of reply at the end once because you moved the motion. Every councillor has had the opportunity to speak. Councillors can have a second opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes, and I will enforce that strictly. And we'll come back to Councillor Jones to speak at the very end. But before councillors get a second bite at the cherry, I would just like to have my first opportunity to speak as well as one of the councillors. Look, can I just say that I'm very pleased to see, and I was very pleased to see as a member of the community, the previous council commit to tipping in $6.6 million on top of $4.5 million from the Better Building Regions Fund. Thank you very much to the Australian Government for providing that. Providing a total of $11.1 million for this project. It is long overdue, it is desperately needed, and I was one of the people during the election campaign that went out and advocated, supported this in the community because, let's face it, Kingaroy CBD is tired. I'd also like to explain to everybody that this council has committed to rolling out CBD redevelopments in every town across the region, hoping to get that done by the end of this term. We have done that in Proston, we have done that in Mergen, and we're hoping to also do that in Wandai. We're doing it in Blackbutt soon, and hopefully then also in Wandai and in Nanango. And of course, we are currently in planning stages for Cumbia. But having said that, look, as an accountant, I can't help but come back to the financial imperatives. Now, we have an obligation under the Act, a very serious obligation, to deal with ratepayers' money very, very sensibly. In fact, I would suggest that we have a fiduciary duty to our ratepayers to make sure that we are doing very careful due diligence and exercising an extremely high level of reasonable care when we are making decisions about the use of their money. Now, I've had a serious conversation with Glenn Hartwig about this because as much as I love and support this project, as much as the Gympie councillors in time gone by loved and supported and desperately wanted their once-in-a-generation project for the redevelopment of Nash Street, Mayor Hartwig has articulated to me that the costs blew out significantly once they started ripping up the ground. Now, that's not to say that will happen here, but it is an unknown. I don't expect it to be the same case here, but it is an unknown. Now, as Councillor Frolov has shared with us, Mergen is an example of that, where once we started ripping up the ground, the costs in the Mergen footpath redevelopment did obviously increase significantly as a result of additional works that had to be undertaken in response to that. I don't know what the figure is, but it did increase. I am concerned on that basis that maybe the 500,000 that we've put in contingencies for that may not be enough. Now, it's not an exact science. We don't know what we're going to find. Yes, Kingaroy Street was done in 1990, but we still don't know what we're going to find. It might be that that 500,000 becomes $1 million. It might become 1.5. So councillors, at least be prepared for that. It may not, but be prepared for the possibility as such. So then I'm looking at our statement of position, and I'll stand corrected, General Manager Jarvis, as our Chief Financial Officer. But our budget indicates that at year end we'll have 42.2 million in cash, which is a combination of restricted and unrestricted cash. 42.2 million. That's where we're targeting. That's where we're tracking for 30 June cash balance. Now, at the moment, And I must say, we know that this is going to be funded over 3 years. But if that 42, 43 million is about where our cash balance is expected to track year in, year out, moving forward, if we don't see significant increases to that $42 million, significant increases, then we have the potential to put ourselves in a position where our debt that we owe to QTC is more than we've got in the bank. There is the potential, and I'll stand corrected, for us to be in that position. Now, how does that potential come about? So at the moment, we're being asked to vote on a $13.6 million allocation, which would be 4.5 from the feds and 9.1, and 9.1 from council. But of course, that's making the assumption that we'll get the 2.3 from Ergon and Main Roads. Because I've read the workshop report last night that was presented to this council in my absence for conflict of interest reasons, which I've now been cleared of, that showed a total of 15.9. So the General Manager presented a report at a workshop which showed in October, and I've got it here on my computer here now, I can show you, 15.9 million. That includes 13.6 from council and other sources and 2.3 from Ergon and DTMR. So that's the estimate. That's the forward planning budgeting. That makes the total 15.9. So the figure on the report shows 15.9. It actually shows that figure. Now, that would mean that council, if we don't get Ergon and DTMR on board for some reason, and we do know that the state government is struggling with COVID with funding at the moment, they're not in a great financial position, they'll admit that themselves. If the state can't tip in that 2.3 from those two agencies, we then have a $15.9 million program, 4.5 from the feds, we're up for 11.4. Now, if our cash balance is around that 42, 33 million, 42.2 million, 42.2 million, we take off 11.4, we would be back to 30.8. Now, I know this is over 3 years. If our cash balance goes up by 10 million, well, it won't be a problem, okay? But if our cash balance was to stabilise around that, 40 to 45 million, where it tends to hover, we could have a situation where we've only got 30 million in the bank in 3 years' time, potentially. I know we're going to put money into funded depreciation, whatever else. 30 million in the bank. But our debt is already at 32. It may not be much less than 30, it might be in the high 20s. So we could be in a position where, for the first time in this council, in a long time, what we owe in debt could be similar to what we've got in cash in the bank. The moment we owe 33, we've got 45. Okay, I'm feeling pretty comfortable with that. At 30 in the bank and 27 or 28, say, owing to QTC, I'm not feeling so comfortable. Okay, the margin's too tight. I am concerned that the 500K, if it blows out to 1.5, for example, an extra million, then the 15.9 becomes 16.9. We've got a $70 million project. We're asked to put in then, we're talking 12.5 million. 12.5 million off 42 brings us back to 30 million. Again, we've got an issue with our balance sheet. So I am concerned. I'm concerned about, in making these decisions, we have to be cognizant of our fiduciary duty to the ratepayers of this region and our legislative obligations to manage our finances very carefully. It is not our money, let's remember that. This is the ratepayers' money. Our rates are such that our ratepayers can't afford, and I don't think have an appetite for, significant rate rises moving forward over the next 5, 10 years. In fact, I would like to see us start to mitigate rates. Mitigate rate rises, in fact, perhaps even provide some concession and support, because rate rises, we know, are an economic inhibitor. So look, I'm going to wrap up because I've probably gone over my 5 minutes, but I am concerned about the financial implications. I do support everything Councillor Potter has said. I live in Kingaroy, it's a tremendous project, but I also know a lot of people in Kingaroy. And I know that what they're saying to me is, we love the transformation project. We're not so keen on Glendon Street because it will be perceived as another extension to the front of council area. We would like to see Memorial Park done. We don't have a decent regional park. It's the only regional park in the region. We don't have a good park. And there's a lot of excitement around the community about the concept that council's going to do a master plan on that park. It might cost $4 million. We might have to tip in too in match funding. The Pearl needs redeveloping. That could be $10 million. Apex Park needs new playground equipment. That could be $1 million. Now, I don't think there's going to be an appetite from the South Bennett community for us to spend all of our Works for Queensland money over the next 3-4 years on Kingaroy, because there are things that need to be done in the other towns. So we do have to be really careful here, guys, and get this decision right. I would implore you to think carefully about this. And for that reason, I would support, I'm going to support holding this off. I'd like another month to give this some serious consideration. I'd like to see more detailed budgeting come forward. I'd like to have more time to talk to the community, and not just the Kingaroy community, the entire South Bennett community, about the significance of this project. And let's make sure we get this right. If it takes another month or two, let's get it right, because it could be the difference between us being in a strong, or in a reasonable financial position and in a poor financial position in 3 years' time. And I don't want to be the mayor that sits at this table as a qualified accountant and have to say to the people of the community, we've got $30 million in the bank, but we've got $29 million worth of debt. I'm going to be really uncomfortable with that. And then you can't get Memorial Park done, you can't get the pool done, we can't do the other things in the other towns around the region that we know need doing. For example, Wondai swimming pool also needs work. We can't get the other projects that we'd like to see around the region done. No, there's no guarantee that we're going to get the Works for Queensland money that we've got in the past. The state government is also under financial stress as a result of COVID. Let's be very careful about this decision. I'd implore you to do so. Thank you very much. Okay. Right, well, that's me. I'll go round now to the other councillors. 3 minutes to speak on this again, and then Councillor Jones will come back to you and give you as much time as you need to wrap up. Thank you, as the mover. Okay, Councillor... Yes. Yeah, thanks. And Mr. CEO, just remind me that Councillor Jones will... that'll be your opportunity to speak about your amendment as well. So, now, Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I absolutely see Kingaroy Transformation Project is a catalyst for growth. The issues I have raised come from a place of ensuring the people I represent that we can deliver on what we are proposing. For me, this project brings the South Bennett region together, finally recognising Kingaroy as the regional hub of the South Bennett. And I fully understand the significance of that statement I've just made. I grew up in Blackbutt. I worked for Nanango Shire Council, and I was here in this very building, working here on the very first day that we opened the doors of every council building as South Bennett Regional Council. While I know there will always be healthy competition between our rugby league teams, I see this project bringing our region together in ways that we have never dared before. I absolutely believe it's Kingaroy's turn, and the years of underspending and underserving Kingaroy demonstrate this. This project comes with high risk. There are many uncertainties and many unknowns, and while I absolutely am behind this project, we know with these plans that we are overspent before we even move a pot plant, and I ask what happens when we start digging up the street. Everything from one shop front door to the opposite shop front door will be coming up, and there's enormous risk as to what we may find. I want to make responsible decisions, and I can't do this without all of the information. It's for these reasons that I won't support today's recommendation. I'm not convinced or confident in the numbers before us. I've built 2 modest homes. I'm about to build my 3rd. I'm currently in the same delicate dance between the house of my dreams and the house that I can afford. And there's no way I would pay my builder for a slab without knowing I couldn't afford the house. It's my view that the funds we are deciding today are our ratepayers' hard-earned dollars. And it's our duty as councillors to ensure a balanced and conservative approach to our council's financial management. For me, I've got to have the confidence in the budget and our ability to deliver on this budget. And I'm sorry, but I'm just not there yet. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Right, thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Okay, other councillors, second opportunity, 3 minutes. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on what Councillor Froloff said, because that was exactly right. After we turned the sod and did what we did on the Mergen footpath, we came up with extra money. It was actually $350,000 over and above what we had agreed to as a council. So we put our hand up for all of the stuff for the Mergen footpath, turned the started the project and found more. And that was the same with the Proston footpath. They found that there was an underground fuel tank, and that blew that project out after we put our hand up and agreed to that amount. And then the same with the Nanango streetscape. If you look back, it just got bigger and bigger. My concern is, as what the Mayor has articulated, and also I've spoken to Glenn Hartwig as well, the Mayor of Gympie Council, and they had two projects. One was the Gympie Rattler and the other one was a aquatic centre, and they turned, in one term, their council from where they were benchmarked as a model council into a council that is in dire financial straits. So it doesn't take very long for that for a turnaround. So our council, I'm proud of the work we've done for a very, very long time to try and get a good outcome for our ratepayers, but keep looking at making sure that we're financially sustainable, and concerned, as everyone is, about the rates and where that's sitting. We're right up there with rates, and I want to be able to try and hold that back, similar to what the Mayor is saying. So I'm very, very concerned that we have an economic responsibility to ensure that this project is sustainable, and yes, support the project, but absolutely only within budget. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Duff. Any other councillors? Second opportunity to speak. Councillor Henshin, 3 minutes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, again, we can go round and round. There's an old saying, a minute in time saves 9. If we go through this and want to economise, and that's virtually what's being suggested, against this transformation takes place, and as I suggested before, in 2022 we're standing here and saying, oh, I wish we would have done that. But it's not done properly, and we go back to where we may have cut funding in this project. What is that going to cost us? Now, Glendon Street does get talked about regularly. Of course it does. But if there was to be something skimped on there, and to come back there with the infrastructure that goes on under the ground, now I've become very aware in the last 6 months, not about what's above the ground, it's about what's under the ground. And no, we don't know what's under there. You're exactly right. The longer we leave that, the worse it's going to be, possibility. And a classic example is our sewerage in Nanango. So if we want to look forward and think about restraints and saving money and our performance, I'm very confident in this council, and it's proved already the things that we've taken on. And we are a new council. Yes, we are. We're not going to get things right 100% of the time. This is a project that's been on the table for quite some time. And as far as all the other projects are concerned, the ones outside the square, be them in Wandai, be them in Cumbia, be them in Memorial Park, when we come to them, I'm very confident that this council will be able to work in and around our finances to be able to do something that's extremely beneficial to this community and the South Burnett. This project has been on the table for so long. I am passionate about, like everyone here, and Councillor Schumacher, Councillor Duff, yes, we have gone out there and sold it, and I certainly didn't in the early stages. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there'll be local constituents in my division would know exactly my feelings on it. But in time, this has to happen. This has to happen. With what we've got to work with, we've got to do it now rather than later. And if we come back here in 2 or 5 years' time, or 4 years' time, and we present to this council and the community members that we've got to do something we didn't do back in 2001 and 2022, I think that'd be seriously detrimental. So I'd love to see this project, as I said before, put the shovel in the ground and let's start. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Councillor Henshin. Any other councillors? Councillor Potter.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I've just got a question. So once Councillor Jones puts forward his amendment to the motion, are we able to speak to that amendment after he's put that forward?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to take my 3 minutes now, and I'll try not to be 3 minutes. Look, as a qualified accountant, giving advice to a client, I would not advise to proceed with this recommendation. on the basis that you haven't done your due diligence in costing appropriately to the extent that you need to, the forward estimates around this in relation to matters like resolving, have you got the $2.3 million contribution from the state? Resolving matters like making sure that your key decision makers in your organisation have had an opportunity to see right down to the appropriate level of detail and be very comfortable with this. So as a councillor, I can't within myself sign up to and support a motion that I feel, and I'd like it recorded on record here please, that I have real concerns that if council supports this and passes this motion, that it could result in this council being in financial distress by the end of its term. It may not, but it could do, and I'd like to do, because of those concerns, I would like to do much more financial due diligence on this over the next month, and I'd be happy to come back and reconsider the matter in December, at the December meeting. I'd like to be given that time to really, really work through all the detail on the costings to make sure that what we're going to spend money on here is valued by the community, has broad community benefit, and most importantly, that whatever the total figure is, we can afford it without putting ourselves in the position that Gympie was in. Gympie were regarded as the best council, I'm told by Glenn Hartwig, I'm assuming that's right, a few years back, 5 years ago. They were the model council financially. They now have to borrow to pay wages. They are in financial distress and in a world of hurt. I would hate to see the good people of the South Bennett put in that situation under my term of council. And for that reason, I'd like another month to see more detail around the dollars, and then I'll be happy to consider this project. I'm very supportive of the project, Councillor Hanshin. I know it needs to be done. Kingaroy is tired. I live in the town. I drive up and down these streets every day and the roads are buggered and the footpaths a mess. We also need a commitment, though, from the landholders to fix the facades. And I just want to clarify for people, that is not council's responsibility. We have no legislative right to tell people that they've got to fix their buildings up. If their awnings are hanging over our footpath, yes, we can deal with that as a compliance matter. But we have no legislative right to tell people how to present their buildings. So I just want to clarify for the community, please, it's not council's responsibility to fix the facades, because there's been some community commentary around that. That will be up to the landlords. But I do want to say that very clearly, I'd like it recorded, that I have serious concerns about council's financial capacity to spend what could be at the moment 15.9 million, potentially more if we find more underground. And on that basis, I will just like more time to do the due diligence, supporting the project, but make sure we get the money side of it right. That's it for me. If there's no one else that wishes to speak, I'm now going to go to Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones, you've got a full opportunity now to speak for your motion, and if you feel, as you mentioned, to also put forward an amendment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to firstly acknowledge every single councillor's view here today, and I don't disagree with anything that's been said for or against this project. I completely understand all the concerns for a start and all the positives. I just want to refer to Councillor Duff's comments on the blowouts and all that sort of stuff that we've had. That happened, in my view, that happened because we didn't properly scope that project. The Mergen footpath, for an example, we started that construction without any proper due diligence. And I'll stand here and admit that I was part of that council that supported that motion, because we started it and we didn't have a proper plan in place. I also want to, I believe, now I'm going to refer to a few emails, respondents and all that sort of stuff for RFIs and all that sort of stuff in the past, and one yesterday afternoon from the finance sector that sort of makes it clear that there's not any major or hugely impacting financial burden on anything moving forward, if that's the figures. I believe that the roads project won't be affected. I've had people say to me, oh, if we put that extra money into this the transformation project, is it going to affect or drop any projects, roads or anything like that out? and the operational team. I won't get involved in that, but I'll ask General Manager Meehan to maybe comment on that a bit later. I don't believe personally that anything will be affected or anyone will miss out on roads, projects or anything like that moving forward. We can adjust our capital works program over the next 3 years. 3 years, sorry, Mr Mayor, as you've identified. This project goes over 3 years. And I will say that this, in my short time in a council seat, it is the most professional preparation for any major project that I've been involved in the last 4.5 years. I've got to say, I've got to give credit to the team. I believe that they've done everything, and I really do appreciate the background that you have, Mr Mayor, coming from an accountant's view. I totally get that. Refer to the Ergon and the TMR, the 829,000. If Ergon don't come to that to the party there, I believe, now I will stand corrected if I'm wrong here, the poles can be left there, but we can put the pipes and all that sort of stuff in if Ergon want to come back and put that power underground. So that 820,000, if they don't come to the party and don't pay that, now I'm happy to be corrected here in operation or whatever, I'm just putting this out there. TMR, 1.5 million, and I believe in some of the statements and the emails that have been floating around, it's stated quite clearly that that will then force this project to come back to council for further discussions, whether it goes ahead or how we do it or whatever. Now, I'm happy to be corrected on that. Just want to touch on Glendon Street. Now, Glendon Street has been portrayed, social media comments, that I went to Mergen yesterday morning and had a catch up with, I sat in front of the coffee shop there, I spoke to 6 people, and they were all of the opinion that the 2.5 million was being spent wholly and solely on Glendon Street. Once I explained to them that the whole extra cost in Glendon Street is about 450,000 and explained to them what it was, and I revert back to now, just let me get this right, Mr Mayor, it will help. In the activity statement in the report put up on page 6, it's under activity. Down the bottom it says the development of a Glendon Street shared community zone including trees, fixed shade, fixed seating and landscaping. Now, it's my information that when we applied, this council applied for funding for this project, keeping in mind that it was 2 failed attempts. And the information that came back, the information that came back to this council, the federal government for funding, keeping in mind there were 2 failed, yeah, I've said that, and information passed on to our staff for the region's benefit was don't apply for another streetscape, something more significant and include, for example, a shared community zone. It makes a difference to human and social activation of the community and supports economy. Now, that's the justification on Glendon Street. Now, when we first started with Glendon Street, I didn't agree with the proposal. It was all fancy and trees and all that sort of stuff. The proposal that's put forward there now has taken on the views of all the community that's been involved in their feedback. The other thing that I would like to, again, it spans over 3 budgets, and this is why I feel confident that this council can fund this increased budget. There is no guaranteed external funding like you've already commented. The state government at this stage has firmly confirmed that Works for Queensland will continue. We may have developer contributions or whatever. Who knows what's available we can go and get more funding, whatever. Hence the swimming pools, your memorial park suggestion, fully on board with that. We spoke about that yesterday. We need a master plan, get that developed, all that sort of stuff. That's works in progress. You've mentioned that our projects coming up, Blackbutt Main Street upgrade is in the process. Cumbia Main Street is in design. Nanango Main Street is in design. Mergen's completed almost. Wandai Street design. Proston completed. Maidenwell about to commence. Bunya Mountain's underway. Now, I stand here saying that I support this for the extra funding, and when we get to these projects right here that I've just named there, I'll use Nanango for an example. We've got to do the footpaths down the main street of Nanango. When we do that project, I will be one person that will stand there and fight to try and get that power underground because it looks atrocious down the main street of Nanango. Takes away. So that's my view, and that's sort of some of the justification why I'm supporting this and moving this amendment in a minute. So, Councillor Schumacher's comments, risk, everybody's concerns about risk. 100% there's a risk to this, 100%. But the risk that I see is calculated, it's been scoped, there's a lot of preparation. This has been in the process for 3 years. And I just believe that it's a risk that's worth taking. I can feel confident, considering, just keep in mind, this is a roads and drainage portfolio that 75% of this work's under. So I stand here in front of you today making a commitment to you and the people of this region that I will be watching this like a hawk, and I'll be talking to these fellows on a regular basis, because no one will look more sillier than myself, because that is under my watch and council overall. So yeah, there is a risk, totally get that. The benefits, it was mentioned there in Councillor Potter's presentation a minute ago, 57 jobs will be created. We'll have 22.43 million in direct output benefits to our regional economy. This input into our economy far outweighs council's contribution of the money that we're asking, and is better than a factor of 2.0 return on investment. That may sit well. You might have an answer for that, Mr. Mayor. I believe the correspondence, there's lists of all sorts of where they've been out for consultation. There's a wide-ranging and extended consultation for the KTP, which continues today with one-on-one sessions, and they occur daily. The feedback from the team that's involved in it and from my own conversations is the project has overwhelming support. Now, at that stage, I will say that when you go to people and they're not on board with it, their concerns are the extra money that we're asking for. When I explain to those people that the benefits, and I'll revert back to the ones that we got in our package: inclusiveness, livability and identity, assets and sustainability, smart country, data innovation, construction, economic impact. And I explained to them then that the significance of this project, and I'm a little bit deterred that a lot of people in this chamber today have referred to it as Kingaroy, and I get it, it's a Kingaroy transformation project. Me personally, it's a regional thing. I look at it as a regional benefit. Yes, it's happening in Kingaroy, but the regional significance to this project, and that's where we're asking for this extra spend to incorporate all the towns, the ones that I've just mentioned, Cumbia, Nanango, Mergen, Wandai, Proston, Maidenall, Bunyip, and everyone else that I've forgotten. All those updated streetscapes or projects that we're going to do, correct me if I'm wrong, will be linked back to the transformation project, and you will have your identities. Now, I spoke to a person in Mergen, and I told him about the QR codes that we're trying to put in, and we're trying to get it across the region so you can walk down the street and you can hit a button and you can get to Mergen. I got an email sent to me, and I can show you there. They want to be a part of it. They want to know all about it because he's involved with the new building that's going in Mergen. They want to do something similar to connect straight to here. So the feedback's there. And, you know, I really do understand. I really do understand your concerns. But in my time as a councillor, this is by far the best developed, the best scoped, the most professional preparation we've ever had. And with my amendment that I want to move shortly, it addresses all these situations. And you will raise your eyebrows when I read out a part of it, but I can justify it, I can speak to it. There's another thing in the, we can do that when I talk to the amendment, that's fine. So just again, in Kingaroy, biggest town in our region, no money has been spent on the CBD in the last 30 years. KTP has been in the making for at least 20 years. Roger Nunn was the mayor then, I believe, when it all started. There was concepts prepared and budgets allocated in the early 2000s to start works with O'Neill Square, Kingaroy Visitor Information Centre, and that was meant to be the start. Unfortunately, nothing since. Since amalgamation, the only major road or CBD projects undertaken in Kingaroy, Markle Street Rehab, the Town Hall forecourt, which was funded by, in part, external grants, and this year the Alfred Street car park. And Kingaroy represents approximately 20% of our rate base for the South Bennett region. So I don't want to stand here and say it's Kingaroy's time, need to spend the money in Kingaroy. I want to say that the transformation project needs to go ahead for the region. I really do and honestly believe that this project will create such a remarkable change to our region, keeping in mind with our proposals for the rest of our towns, the streetscapes, I take the parks, the entries, all that sort of stuff. That's works in progress. We can do that. We've got a 5 and a 10-year program that we can plan ahead. We need to look at that. There's a lot of stuff. This council is doing a lot of good work. And correct me if I'm wrong, but are we not able to, as we go through this project, and we had a little conversation, you made the comment to me, Mayor, and we've had this conversation a bit, we as a council still control what happens. Even if something major happens somewhere down the track and it says, oh, we need to spend an extra 2 million or whatever, we have the control and the ability to change, do things and adjust. Is that a fair comment?
Look, Councillor Jones, yeah, thanks for your question. I think we do, but I'd be concerned that if we've got half the project done, we can't change the look of the remaining half.
Yeah.
Councillor Jones, can I just, we need to move on. The CEO is going to be kicking me out of the table soon, and rightly so. Councillor Jones, I'd just like you, for the benefit of the chamber, to clarify one point that you raised. At the start of your speech, you referred to an email from the Finance Department where you said that you've received professional advice from the Finance Department in the form of an email. An RFI, which from our finance professionals, our qualified accounting team in this council, that this project will not place any financial burden on council. And I quote your words. I would like that recorded in the minutes as being the advice of the Finance Department for future reference in years to come. And I would like to give General Manager, I'd like you to perhaps disclose that email to the chamber, and I'd like you to also, I'd like to give General Manager Jarvis, as we should appropriately, the opportunity to clarify the intent of that email. Thank you. Jarvis, would you mind clarifying the content and the intent of the email and confirming whether or not the intent of that email is to advise council that the project will not place council under financial burden? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. That was sent and distributed to all councillors yesterday afternoon as a request for information, I think requested by you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Schumacher. Now, the advice there was done in consultation with the infrastructure team, and that advice, I believe, is based on a summary is that the assumption that if we don't borrow, if the project comes in as it is now and the funding is obtained, no, it won't have any financial burden to the council in the future. However, there are exceptions there that state further the impact on the council if that funding is not secured through Ergon or Main Road or Department of Transport, I beg your pardon. But if General, am I correct there?
Look, I'll leave it at that.
Yes.
Thanks, General Manager Jarvis. Councillor Jones, at the risk of misleading the chamber, I would ask you to please clarify the comments that the advice from our accounting department is that this project will not place council under financial burden. And in doing so, read the entire email if you could, please.
Okay, and my apologies, Mr Mayor, for probably the wrong terminology. My apologies. I certainly, was my intent, but I can read the whole email. This is a RFI response. What will we have to pull from the cash reserves for the KTP project? There's a list of all the money there. At this stage, it is proposed to fund 500 from restricted cash, which will be sourced from the property sales balance. This item had $1,036,000 less the purchase of the Trendsetter shop, which leaves a current closing balance of 686. It is proposed that 500k of this closing balance be allocated to KTP. See above table item. Items 1 and 2 are proposed to be funded by the available depreciation in those years from those asset classes in line with the council budget process. This means that the future capital works program will be amended to allow for a change in project priority to use available funded depreciation in that year. This will also ensure that there is no cross-subsidisation and this money is invested in capital works. Item 3 is grant funding received. The above table is as per the report with commentary in the report that the actual phasing of budget will be confirmed annual and quarterly budget programs. Example, funds may be brought forward in accordance with program expenditure and progress. Question, would pulling this cash from the cash reserve impact the 3 months operating expenses that we have to have in our cash reserves? It is proposed to only fund 500k from restricted cash. The below table shows Council's minimum liquidity for the past 8 months as calculated from QTC cash flows forecast model in the proposed column. An adjustment has been made for the 500k, which shows that there is little effect on minimum liquidity. How would the decision to increase the budget change our financial position? Could this put us under financial stress if Council allocates the extra budget, and how does this risk our financial position? At this stage, it is proposed that the 500k be used from restricted cash, which is converting unallocated restricted cash from property sales into capital assets. This is not affecting Council's financial position. The remaining additional budget is proposed to be funded by available depreciation for that program in that year, which means reallocating the priority of projects. Whilst there is an upgrade percentage in the work undertaken, it is not expected that the asset sustainability ratio will be greatly impacted as it is managed at the program level in combination with employing a strategy of timing the asset renewal work to address the existing condition of the CBD's aged assets. Council's financial position is not envisaged to be at risk, however. This advice is provided based on the information available to date with the assumption that the project will come in on budget. As with any projects of this size, there is always an amount of inherent risk. The need for additional restricted cash or substantial budget alterations will require reassessment of Council financial position. Should the contributions from Ergon and TMR not be satisfactory, this item will come back to Council for direction as per previous advice issued by the General Manager of Infrastructure. Or is the plan to spend Works for Queensland funding on KTP? Proposed funding sources are a combination of available depreciation within asset classes of 2 million respectively and restricted cash of 500k.
Good, thank you, Councillor Jones. I think it's important that we clarify that to make sure that we aren't misleading the chamber and that we also are not throwing our finance staff under the bus unfairly and inappropriately. Yeah, so Mr. CEO, thank you for that. That's wonderful. It's just confirmed that that email will be added to the minutes as the advice and the information from finance. Right. Well, thank you, Councillor Jones. Now let's get to this amendment. You wanted to amend your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The amendment that I would like to put forward to Council, taking into consideration all the views of the public and the comments that have been spoken here today, funnily enough, that Council, in regards to Kingaroy Transformation Project, 1. Adopt the design in principle for construction as presented in Attachment 2. Approve the budget with a 13.9 million budget, including contingency, with the additional budget to come from funded depreciation and restricted cash over the period of the project, including 2 million, and I'll revert to, if you want to go to your budget breakdown for the 3 years, 2 million from transport infrastructure, 300,000 from water and wastewater, and 500,000 from property sales, and any project savings to be returned to restricted cash for transport infrastructure or water and wastewater respectively for reallocation by Council. 3. Delegate the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate contributions to the project from transport and main roads as per the TMR local government, which we should all have a copy of, that document there, and cost sharing agreement. 4. Delegate to the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate contributions to the project from Ergon Energy for the undergrounding of power services. 5. Council proceed with the groundbreaking ceremony for the project on Monday the 14th of December 2020. And number 6, that Kingaroy and Glendon Streets between Alfred Street and Markwell Street be considered for design when council considers its 21-22 financial budget.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Mr CEO, we just want to make sure we get this right. So I'm just going to make sure that our staff here have got that recorded correctly. So I might just go to you, Mr CEO, just to confirm. Thank you.
You can I can give you a copy.
You got a copy there? And we'll then get the copy. We'll have it reread because we've been through a fair bit here.
Now, Mr Mayor, it's up. I'll ask this question. Can I speak to those?
So, Councillor Jones, first of all, we'll just get this motion, this amended motion correct.
Yep.
We'll then seek a seconder, and then we'll obviously come back to the floor because we will need to give councillors the opportunity to debate the amended motion under our standing orders. Just make everyone aware while we're waiting that we have a presentation to a long-serving staff member at 12 o'clock. So if we don't have this matter resolved by then, we'll reconvene once we've had that presentation.
An hour, probably. Must be watching.
All right, thanks very much. So we have the amended motion on screen, and we will read that shortly. But before we do, Mr. CEO, just in relation to those delegations to you, do we need to perhaps just make an adjustment there in terms of coming back to council?
With the leave of the mover, I would suggest just as good reporting. So wherever it's delegated and given the nature of the project, that there's a regular report back on progress back to a council meeting as just good governance.
Mr. CEO, and through you, Mayor, is it, I've just been thinking, and is it possible that somehow I can put wording into that amendment that if for whatever reason TMR, Ergon, something doesn't happen with the funding, that it comes back to council for future?
Well, that would be anything that's delegated to me in this circumstance would come back to council. Yeah, so that's, I would feel very much more comfortable with that as well.
Okay, so Councillor Jones, I'm just going to ask you to read that your motion again from 1 to 6, please, for the benefit of the chamber, and then we'll seek a seconder before going to debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the amendment to the resolution that I would like to move is that Council, in regards to Kingaroy Transformation Project 1, adopt the design in principle for the construction as presented in Attachment 2. 2, approve the budget with a $13.9 million budget, including contingency, with the additional budget to come from funded depreciation and restricted cash over the period of the project, including $2 million from transport infrastructure, $300,000 from water and wastewater, $500,000 from property sales, and any project savings to be returned to restricted cash for transport infrastructure or water and waste, respectively, for reallocation by council. 3, delegate to the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate contributions to the project from Transport and Main Roads as per the TMR Local Government Cost Sharing Agreement, with regular progress reports back to Council. 4, delegate to the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate contributions to the project from Ergon Energy for the undergrounding of power services, with regular progress reports back to Council. 5, Council proceed with the groundbreaking ceremony for the project on Monday the 14th of December 2020. And 6, that Kingaroy and Glendon Streets between Alford and Markwell Street be considered for design when Council considers its 21-22 financial budget.
Right, thank you, Councillor Jones. We've got that moved. You've moved that amended motion. Do we have a seconder for such? Councillor Henshin has seconded the amended motion. Okay, now we've got a new motion effectively on the table, amended motion. I think that in light of that, we're asking for more. Councillor Jones is asking for more money, so the 13.6 million is now gone to 13.9 million. And as a result, I think it's appropriate that councillors are given opportunity to speak for or against the amended motion. Does any councillor wish to speak? Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are all concerned about the budget, and this is a project we will have to keep a close eye on. But Councillor Jones is right. They have done their due diligence with this. This is the most work I've ever seen on a project that's been done behind the lines. So the guys have done an amazing job. The community consultation has been tremendous, and we just can't say enough about that. But I believe that the Glendon Street zone will also change the way that the community can use that space. It will actually save community groups money, because we will not have to get a full, correct me if I'm wrong, GMMA, but community groups won't actually have to get a traffic management plan for that area. Sorry.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we would have a standard traffic management plan for that area now, so that if there was an event there, it would be an easy closure. So there would be no, there'd be minimal changes that unless the event was outside of that zone. So
Thank you. And also, as Councillor Henshin rightly said, you know, time is money. So every time we put this project back, it's going to cost us more because prices do go up, and that's the nature of that's the nature of time. So I believe with the data innovation and the smart country hub that we're talking about, it will also bring more businesses to town of the sort that don't need a lot of water, because we know that's an issue also for our town. So to have maybe agencies, government agencies coming to town that may be setting up their businesses in the area with the connectivity that we're going to have, hopefully, I think that this is a huge bonus for the area, for the whole South Bennett. And I believe we need to do this, and we need to do it right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thank you, Councillor Potter. Other councillors? Councillor Schumacher?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Potter. Certainly, the amended motion, it does address my concerns in terms of having a heightened contingency. And I guess I just have a question, if that's all right, through you, Mr. Mayor, in relation to funded depreciation. My concern is that we do seem to have a reactive maintenance strategy. So I just want to understand if we are using more funded depreciation, and if I've got the words right, reallocating priority projects from the financial advice we've got, what does that actually mean for this council? Does that mean we're pushing back other projects to do this project if we support another 300,000? Can I just have that confirmed?
Yeah, look, I'll go to General Manager Jarvis first and then give General Manager me an opportunity to add any further information. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. In summary, Councillor, yes, that means we redistribute the capital works and other projects get pushed back, if the terminology is correct.
Thank you, General Manager. General Manager Meehan, anything to add to that?
yeah, just through you, Mr. Mayor, just to comment around the operational maintenance, that'll be an OPEX expenditure, and this will be capital. The money that we're focusing for targeted depreciation would still be spent on renewal and upgrade projects within that stream. So it would just be the priority project for council, and you'd still have your additional money to allocate per your project. You would need to look at that at each budget when it's presented, also in line with your budget strategy here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that. And I wanted to confirm, so we are saying that council still has the full ability to control, adjust, and that there will be open reports to council every month in relation to managing the budget for this project.
Yeah, General Manager.
Yeah, my understanding is the resolution there is that you're delegating to the CEO to report his progress on there. Our reporting on the project would come as per every other capital works project, in whatever form that comes to council. I think you get that monthly now, and then also you'd have any adjustments through the quarterly review process. And
my other concern that I raised was around the fact that the review that's been undertaken, the third-party review, is yet to be received by councillors. So I'd just like an update as to how, you know, if that review comes in and we actually require more money, what does that mean?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, if you're happy for me to answer, we would report to councillor. So, yep. If our information changes, we would report. Anything substantial changes, we would report to council, just as we would with our standing committee projects.
Yep. And my final question, just in terms of Kingaroy Street, I did put a notice of motion up because I absolutely believe that we have to do that. We have to finish Kingaroy Street South as a part of this project. Absolutely agree with that. And I think it would be ludicrous not to, considering the significant investment we're making in the Kingaroy Transformation Project and the current condition of our main street. But, and you know, with what I've been told, what council currently knows about the scope of works, I've been advised it could cost 1.9, then I was advised it could cost 2, then it could cost 3.3 million. So to progress these works, we absolutely need to find the money in our budget to complete Kingaroy Street South. And the only way we can do this is to accurately know the cost of these works. So this amendment does mean that you would start those works, the design elements.
Councillor Schumacher, could you just speak into the mic? We're just having trouble hearing you on
sorry.
live stream.
Yep.
Yep, thank you.
Happens to me all the time. Don't have a big enough voice.
Speak up a bit.
Speak up.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, your amendment reads that you'll consider that for your forward 21-22 design program. Your council in this budget, any forward design, whether it's this project or parks or whatever it might be, similar to our conversations yesterday, I think there'll be an opportunity, council in the new year, to set its program for next year, and then also look at how you want to fund those projects with your 21-22 budget. Does that make sense?
And then my final question, sorry, Mr. Mayor, sorry to labour on the term. I just want to confirm if, is there any reason why we could not leave this matter on the table until the December ordinary meeting when we have that final review of all the costings?
I believe we'll take that on notice, Mayor. That's not for us to answer.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They're all my questions.
Okay, so we're uncertain as to whether there'll be any implications for leaving the matter on the, for potentially adjourning the matter, but that'll, that would be another matter to be considered separate to this. Should you want to amend this if this doesn't get up. This is the motion. We've got a second for this. Okay, other councillors speak in relation to the amendment. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak against the amendment because now, into my way of viewing this, it's now asking for another. The amendment is asking for another 300,000 in addition to the overspend of 2.5 million. I just can't, like all the arguments I've put forward now have been actually elevated. I mean, to me, that's an admission that there's not enough money in the first place to ask for another 300,000. Still, the question about the Ergon and main roads still, for me, is up in the air. And now we're actually extending it, so we're not going to wait until see where this lands, but we're also going to now progress the further design on without us, like now we're actually asking council to agree to looking at the budget instead of waiting till we get to that budget to actually further progress the next lot of designs before we know where this one's going to land. So it raises huge red flags for me, this particular resolution, more so than the first one. So I just know, like I've got beautiful glossy magazines about this design, and I think it's been scoped out beautifully, community consultation, fantastic. Nowhere in this one that I've seen is anything about the dollars and cents. There's not one, nowhere has anyone said to the community, as far as I'm aware, that if you have this, it's going to cost this, as opposed to if you have this, it's going to cost this. I haven't seen anywhere where there's been a comparison. It'd be like if I went to, I've got $50,000 to spend in Proston at the moment on Railway Park, and I've gone to the community and I've said, what are your priorities? And they've gone, we want this, 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 and this, and this. But I'm going to go back to them and say, but we can only afford this and this. Later on down the track, we might be able to afford this and this, but I've only got that much. Nowhere have I seen where we've said to the community, we've got 11.1 million to spend, but if you want it, the 2.5 means this, this, and this. If we take it out, it means this, this, and this. So, like, I am just 100% beautiful consultation, just like you would if you wanted the world. But at some point, we've got to say, well, no, because we've got to be sustainable. We've got to have, financial management. There's a bucket load of stuff right across our region that we have to address. This is a great project, but it's not everything. And so this resolution scares me more than the first one. So I'm absolutely 100% opposed to it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Duff, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, I'm just going to say a few words. Councillor Schumacher, you've had your shop. Okay, now, thank you, Councillor Jones, for this amended resolution motion. I'd like to speak to that. There's been a reference to time is money. We need to get this done, get it started. But let's not forget we've got a responsibility, a legislative responsibility. and I'm going to speak very strongly here, we have a legislative responsibility to manage the ratepayers' money carefully. It is my view, and you all know my background and my qualifications, it is my view Councillor Jones's amendment has the potential to put this council in a position where we may not be able to match the 50% funding the federal government will require from us, Councillor Jones. If we want to do things like Memorial Park, if we want to fix the old playground equipment in Apex Park, if we want to do other parts of Kingaroy streets like the dilapidated southern end of Kingaroy Street running down to the BP service station, if we want to build and redevelop a facility, a community and wellness hub, if we want to respond to the need for a tertiary hub for tertiary students in our region, if we want to redevelop the Wandai Pool, which is the only real asset that community has from an entertainment and recreation perspective of any significance, if we want to allocate more funding to fix Les Muller Park as it needs to be. It's a Tier 1 park from a community's perception, and it's nowhere near a Tier 1 park standard. If we want to develop more facilities in places like Cumbia, there is a lot on our council's agenda in terms of expenditure. I am concerned that if we throw all our eggs in one basket here, it is going to significantly hamstrung in terms of our ability to deliver on those projects that people around Kingaroy are screaming out for, like Memorial Park, like Apex Park, like the buildings and like the work on southern Kingaroy Street. I am very concerned that if council passes this amended motion, I do not want to be the mayor that's sitting here in a position that Mayor Hartwig at Gympie's in. I hope that where it doesn't lead us. I hope that my concerns have been noted in the minutes so I can recall back to those concerns if we ever end up in a position in the future, because I don't want that put on my shoulders and responsibility, considering my professional status and my role as the mayor of this organisation. That being said, it's a matter for the chamber to vote on. I am going to vote against this because I have serious financial concerns about scope creep, and I believe that proper due diligence, proper, careful consideration, as the Act expects of us, would be to go back and do further detailed calculations, or at least share those detailed calculations with our council through workshopping, through a standing committee, and perhaps bring it back to the December meeting in a month's time. We take a month to get this right, because once we start, as Gympie found out, you often can't just take the machines off and stop. Once you start, you set a level of expectation that the job's going to be done. And there's no guarantee, that this budget won't go from 13.9 to 14.9 and 15.9 and 16.9. And let me tell you, looking at our financial position, if that happens, in my view, we could have the potential to have to face one of two scenarios: financial distress or significant rate rises levied on the people of our region who are in a low socioeconomic area, and I don't want to be the mayor that has to make that call or vote on something like that. So that's my piece. I'm speaking strongly against it on financial grounds. I would like to see a lot more due diligence done by Council, our finance team. I'd like to see a third-party review of the project and its costings, and a report come back to Council before we sign up to what I think is a lot of money and a big commitment for a small council, and also that we consider the other projects that the community are asking for in Kingaroy, yes, in Kingaroy, but also across the region. There's a big list of things we have to do to develop this region and see it achieve its potential. And I don't want to be in a position where we can't match BBRF funding because we haven't got our 50% to tip in. And let me assure you, the state will not have money to throw around after COVID. Let me assure you, and Treasurer has made it very clear there won't be a lot of money to throw around after this financial year from the federal. So, Councillor Jones, I appreciate your comments that we can access grants to do these things. But I would suggest to you that if you listen to Treasury, there's not going to be a lot of money coming from the federal government after 30 June 2021. We need to take all that into consideration. We need to be careful about this. We need to be sensible about it and not get carried away. Absolutely, let's do it. Let's get the pavement right. Let's get the roads right. They're in a mess. Let's get the footpaths right. Let's get the groundwork right. And as one local businessman who's been here all his life and he's a major businessman in this town said to me, and he's involved heavily in large construction projects as a commercial operator, he said to me, get the foundations and the groundwork right and don't worry about the fancy stuff on top. You can always do that later. But yes, let's get the conduit under the ground. Let's get the pavement right. Let's get the road right. Let's get all that done. But let's be careful that we don't do too much in the way of extras that could put us into financial distress. And all I want is the opportunity to have another look at this without putting it back too far, have another look at it, do our due diligence, take our time, make this decision carefully. When I spend ratepayers' money or make a decision on ratepayers' money, I like to think of it as my own money. And I can tell you right now that if this was my wife and I sitting down, committing to this level of money, she would be saying to me, we're not doing this until we check our bank account, check with our bank manager, do our sums, and make sure we can afford it. Because I don't want to have to lose the family home. I don't want to have this council in a position that now one of our neighbouring councils is in because they allowed their projects through scope creep, to send them into financial distress. Having said that, I acknowledge the professionalism of the approach here. All I'm asking for is another 4 weeks to do further due diligence in respect for the people of this region. They expect that office. Quick decisions aren't always good decisions. Look, I'll leave it at that. Now a matter for the chamber, and Councillor Schumacher, give you an opportunity perhaps just to have one last speak, and then we'll go back to Councillor Jones for right of reply before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity. Certainly, I've sat here, I've listened to both sides of the argument, all sides of the argument, and my gut feeling is that I was not elected to waste money. I was elected to find efficiencies and to value every single dollar. And it's absolutely, with no disrespect to the people working on this project, I know you've poured your hearts and souls into this, and I absolutely respect you for it. But the reality is, I feel in my role as a council, I must do my due diligence. I must see that third-party review before I can make a decision. I'm not comfortable and I'm not confident in the budget that's been put forward. I'm just not there yet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Now, Councillor Potter's just had to leave. I think she's probably just had to go for a bit of a visit to the loo. So we'll make sure we sort of just hold this until she comes back in. I would, however, like, if I could take the opportunity while she's out, to ask a question of one of the general managers to answer. We're seeking 2.3 million, Councillor Jones, from Ergon and TMR. If we don't get that, are we prepared, as you inferred, are we prepared to not do the works that $2.3 million would? Are we able to, and are we prepared to say to council, we now won't spend that $2.3 million? Because I want this recorded for future reference.
Yeah, as per our advice through Mr. Mayor, Alan might make a comment around that in a minute around the Ergon. With the delegation to the CEO, we would, if there was a change to those statuses, that Ergon wasn't going to do that work, and TMR gave us an unsatisfactory outcome, we would return to council for direction from the council at that time. So it's not for us to answer the commitment there either way. It would come back to council for your decision. Alan will just talk, if you may, Mr. Mayor, just about the
And I guess
Ergon.
my question, Aaron, is engineering-wise, is it possible to say, well, we won't spend that 2.3 million? Will that be an option for council?
Yeah, just on my options that I gave the advice to the council yesterday, the actual quantum of the work for TMR will depend on what they choose to do inside their corridor. And it could be $1 million, it could be $2 million. It depends on what they decide what happens in their pavement, if that makes sense. Our discussions to date have been quite positive with the district. So, and our advice at the moment is that we would work through the LGAQ agreement to resolve that and hopefully get an outcome. But I'll just hand to Alan to talk about that, if that's okay, Mayor, just how the electricity goes.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Mr. Mayor and councillors, just in relation to those two issues, if we were unsuccessful in getting any assistance from Ergon, the current design allows for us to have the conduits available for future undergrounding, but we can leave the overhead power there, which would lead to currently our estimate. Well, sorry, the quoted amount from Ergon is $865,000 and some dollars. In relation to TMR, as the General Manager of Infrastructure mentioned, the value of the work will largely be determined what Main Roads want to do, and that's across pavement, compliant street lighting, improving the safety around the Haley Street crossing, and surfacing. They have obligations, just like Youngman Street, to maintain their assets as we do, in terms of putting some funding into it, and those who've looked closely at Haley Street would understand that irrespective of what we do, they will have to do something. So we're very confident in the negotiations and discussions and the information we provided to Main Roads through our investigations only last week have really established quite a clear understanding of what's existing and what the solutions might be. But ultimately, it will be their decision, and that will affect and impact their contribution.
Thank you both. Look, so I could just perhaps summarise, and please correct me if my summary is incorrect, that the $865,000 to put the power underground would be saved, could be saved by simply choosing to leave the poles there. And secondly, that at this point in time, we don't know the specifications that TMR are going to demand around or want to see around the pavement on Kingaroy and Haley. So we don't know that from TMR at this stage, do we? That you're saying they're still to scope that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, TMR will deliver their, depending on what scope they deliver, inside that, they will either deliver it through element funding that's available to them, or they will go through their capital process to seek what they believe is the contribution for that project. So what will happen is, obviously, with that, the delegation to Mark is that we would negotiate in accordance with our project budget, and if there's any change to that because of either of those items, we would obviously report back to Council via the CEO. Yep.
Thank you, General Manager. Look, I appreciate that. I guess your responses have only served to heighten my concerns that there are still some uncertainties about what TMR are going to want to do there, and in terms of scoping their work and what it's going to cost. I would, again, like to have clarity around what TMR expect of the pavement in terms of their standards, and to what extent they are going to fund that from those different pools of money you're talking about. I feel much more comfortable, which we had clarity on the technical stuff and also the money. And again, it's a reason why I would be arguing that we should perhaps just take our time on this until we get more information. I think I've argued my point enough, plenty of opportunity. Councillor Jones, I think let's move to wrap this up. Go back to you to now speak. Opportunity to speak in reply as the mover of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any more to say other than I just want to clarify the extra $300,000 that's been asked for. I want to raise the $500,000 to $800,000 contingency. That's what the difference to the original amendment, and that's why it's from 13.6 to 13.9. It's just simple, a little bit more contingency there, and that was in response to an email that was sent to all councillors on Saturday, and concerns raised about not enough contingency. So that's why I put that in there. That I just want to justify or explain to the people why I asked for the 13.6 to 13.9. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Councillor Jones. We've almost concluded our process in accordance with Council's policy and standing orders. So, councillors, you have the motion on the screen in front of you. Everyone's had an opportunity to speak. It's been appropriately seconded. Okay, so we're going to put this to the vote. The motion as the amended motion, as you see on the screen. Those in favour? Okay, so we have Councillor Potter, Councillor Jones, Councillor Froeloff and Councillor Henschen are in favour. Those against? Against, Councillor Schumacher, Councillor Duff and Councillor Otto. Resolution has been passed, 4 votes to 3. Thank you all. Oh, sorry. Yeah, see how Mark just had to get me on track again. The amended resolution has now been passed, 4 votes to 3. Thank you.
Yeah, the amendment becomes the
Sorry,
resolution.
the amendment becomes the resolution.
So
Yes.
I would suggest if with councillors are in agreement, we disperse with right of replies, and so the amendment becomes a resolution. So now the amended resolution gets voted on.
Oh, okay. So we'll now vote on the amended resolution. So the amendment becomes a resolution. That's been voted up 4 to 3. We're now going to vote on the amendment.
So the substantive resolution that was moved has now been amended. The amendment's been carried. So that amended resolution becomes the substantive resolution. So council now decides on the substantive resolution.
Thanks, CEO Mark.
It's quirky, but that's
It's
how it
quirky. Yeah, we know
happens.
you're not trying to be difficult, but if we don't get this right, it doesn't have any legal substance. So the substantive resolution is now by that vote, as you see it on the screen. Okay, so we go straight to a vote on that. Okay, so does anyone else, we'll give you one last chance to speak for or against on this? Okay, I'm going to speak against it strongly again and say that we've got a lot of priorities across this region. It's not just all about Kingaroy streetscape. Yes, we should do it, but we should take our time to consider it carefully so it doesn't come at the detriment of ratepayers in the future, council's financial sustainability, and for that reason I'm saying I'm strongly speaking against it. I'll leave it at that. Councillor Schumacher?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. At the end of the day, when it comes to the finances of council, our finances come from our ratepayers, and I'm just not comfortable with adjusting the budget without that external review and really going through the budget with a fine-tooth comb like we did just this year when we adopted our current budget.
Thanks,
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Schumacher. Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to also have it placed on record my concerns about our long-term financial sustainability. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Councillor Duff. Okay, there's no other red lights on, so we've got the substantive resolution now on the table, on the screen as you see it. Right, those in favour? Councillor Potter, Councillor Jones, Councillor Froeloff and Councillor Henschen in favour. Those against? Councillor Schumacher, Councillor Duff and Councillor Otto against. The substantive resolution has been passed, 4 votes to 3. Matter resolved. Thank you all. Right, now I'm going to move to adjourn. Is it adjourn, Mr CEO? Adjourn the meeting for our, we have a lovely presentation, the nice part of the day, and we'll have a lunch break and resume at 1 p.m. Thank you all. So we have a seconder. I'll move that. We have a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Jones. Thanks, councillors. Everyone's in favour. I'll see you back here at 1 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I'll now move that we recommence the meeting. Yep, reopen the meeting. Second for that. Thanks, Councillor Froeloff. Everyone's in favour. So we'll now proceed with the meeting. 25th of November 2020, our ordinary monthly meeting for month of November, and we're at item 11.1 at 2:55, and presented to the Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting in November was an additional round for applications to the Community Australia Day event sponsorship category.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor.
But before we get into this, Councillor, yes, thank you very much. Councillor Potter is just please note, Councillor Potter is now leaving the room as she has declared a conflict of interest in her role on the Australia Day Committee. Thank you, Councillor Potter. So the committee has recommended that Council approve an additional round for applications to the Community Australia Day event sponsorship category within Council's Community Grants program. So as such, the recommendation is that Council approve the additional round for applications and commencing 26 November, being tomorrow, and closing then on 21 December 2020. So do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jones. A seconder, thank you, Councillor Duff. And if I could just speak to this, firstly, the we've been assured by the staff that with the closing date of the 21st of December 2020, that won't cause any problems in terms of the processing of the applications. So we've had that conversation in discussing the matter at the committee meeting. Those issues have been considered. Right, any councillor wish to speak for or against? Councillor Duff.
I've had some concerns raised with me by some of the committees saying that they've been asked for letters of support and they've asked other committees, community groups for letters of support, and they're saying that they can't actually provide them because they haven't met and they've got to ratify them through their meetings. And so it was brought to my attention by General Manager O'May that individual letters from just individuals will suffice. So I just thought maybe if you are doing any media around it, just let them know that's you know, they don't actually have to get a letter of support from a community group. It can be just an individual.
Thanks, Councillor Duff, and I'm sure our CEO, Mr. CEO, and General Manager will take that on board. Okay, so those in favour, resolution passed unanimously with the 6 councillors. Thank you. And General Manager, would you like to bring back in, or one of the General Managers bring back in Councillor Potter, or do we have one more matter, Australia Day Awards ceremony? Is that good? We good to go with that? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Welcome back. Councillor Potter's now returned to the meeting. And item 11.2 at 2:56. And again, it's been to committee. Committee have recommended that the following Australia Day Award option be progressed. And as such, the officer's recommendation states that the Australia Day Award be progressed with the awards ceremony to be held on Sunday, the 24th of January, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m, with a sausage sizzle barbecue and live band outside the hall at the conclusion of the ceremony. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder, Councillor Schumacher. Thank you. So councillors wishing to speak in regard to this. Mr. CEO, did you just want to add some commentary to this one? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. With the Tuesday night and the now, I won't say post-COVID world, but the world has been affected by COVID, the numbers are limited inside the Wandai Hall. So the choices were to move the venue, which no one wished to do, or try and come up with an alternative arrangement. And Sunday afternoon, councillors' commentary in the past about getting local bands, so we'll get a local band and make it a little bit more festive and allow a much greater crowd, or those who wish to participate too. And I think it'll be quite a nice afternoon.
Thanks very much, Mr. CEO. So those in favour? Oh, sorry, hang on. Councillor Henson, did you want to speak?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
My apologies.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but just in that, there's actually, and it's a minor, there's no mention that it is actually Wandai. We all know it's Wandai, but it's just not mentioned there.
Okay, so if we could just change the motion to say that be held at Wandai on Sunday, etc. Thanks, Councillor Henson. That's a good point. So we've just got that slight change to the resolution, to the motion. If we're happy with that, Councillors Potter and Schumacher, we'll proceed. Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 12.1, Systematic Inspection Program, Animal Management for Cats and Dogs Act 2008 at 2:57. Now we've got a officer's recommendation that the council approve a systematic inspection program for properties within the South Bennett Regional Council's jurisdiction in accordance with section 113 of the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act 2008 to monitor compliance with the requirements of the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act 2008, more specifically the requirement to register dogs. The properties to be included in the systematic inspection program are potentially all properties within the South Bennett area, both within and without the designated town areas. The systematic inspection program will be conducted between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on weekdays and or Saturdays, commencing on Monday the 1st of February 2021 and concluding on Wednesday 30 June 2021. Do we have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Councillor Henson, thank you. Councillors, questions, speakers for, against? Okay, motion put to the floor then. Those in favour? Thank you all. Resolution passed unanimously. 12.2 is at 2:59, and the matter is a recommendation in relation to an approved development must be completed and maintained generally in accordance with approved plans and documents, except where amended by the conditions of this permit. So this matter relates to council-owned facility and the reconfiguring of lots at Luck, on land at Luck Road, Inverlaw, and seeks to realign the boundaries around Kingaroy Waste Facility and existing adjacent rural property. So, Mr. CEO, do I need to read out all of that recommendation? It's quite a...
No, thanks,
mouthful.
Mr. Mayor. It's as tabled.
So recommendation as tabled. I'm happy to move that. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, item 12.3 at 2:90. Okay, so item 12.3, Council is considering a stimulus package involving various forms of incentives for the building, development and business community. Incentives may take various forms such as fee reductions or a development incentive such as reduced infrastructure charges. It may also include non-financial incentives such as risk reduction, streamlining processes, reducing processing timeframes, or the nature of planning advice given for proposed developments. So the officer's recommendation, and I'll go straight to that, is that Council adopt a development incentive scheme consisting of the following general terms and conditions. So first of all, the criteria with being, Crispin is the criteria, the effective dates proposed that the scheme commence on the 1st of December 2020 and run until 30 June 2022. All development is eligible if located within the South Bennett Regional Council area, and infrastructure charges discounts include 50% discount for any commercial use or industrial activity, 50% discount for long-term employment generating development, 75% discount for reconfiguring a lot for residential development, 100% discount for residential development in the rural residential zone, including relocatable parks, 100% discount for rural activity or tourism-based development, for example, short-term accommodation in the rural zone, maximum discount per development $500,000, an applicant to complete application form, and if eligible, an infrastructure agreement form is executed by both parties. Council approved the release of the forms and guidelines to support and promote the development incentive scheme as presented: a fact sheet, development incentives, application form, Appendix A, rules and procedures, Appendix B, definitions. That Council authorise a budget allocation for development incentives as part of the next quarterly budget deliberations. That financial delegations be established for the Executive and Community Standing Committee, Chief Executive Officer and the General Manager Community to approve applications under Council's Development Incentive Scheme. So that is the officer's recommendation. I would like, Mr. CEO, to perhaps address some matters that are contained in the report and seek to amend, not amend the motion as such, but to amend some of the documents that are referred to in item 2 of the resolution, which relates to the fact sheet and particular fact sheet and the rules and procedures. Mr. CEO, am I able to put that forward before moving the motion?
You certainly may. The other option too is to, did you want us to bring the forms back, because Council's agreeing in principle to do this today? So part 1 is your head of power to give it that, and then In your hands, Mr. Mayor, as far as which way you want to go with that one.
Yes. Could I suggest then that we amend item 2, that council approve the release of the forms and guidelines to support and promote the development incentive scheme following appropriate revisions as determined. Is that okay? Or appropriate amendments or okay, so have we got that? Get that on screen shortly, following appropriate amendments. Thank you. So I'll now move that with that slight modification. Do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Okay, we'll now go to the floor. People to ask questions, councillors to ask questions, speak for or against. If I could start off just by clarifying those appropriate amendments. And I'd like councillors to refer to the two items, the financial and resource implications on page 291. And I might just read that and give some background. So council will experience budget implications from this decision. Based on a review of the infrastructure charges issued at the time of preparing this scheme, there was a certain number of eligible developments that may access the scheme. An assessment has been made of these amounts. Capping of proposed discounts will help reduce cost. So comfortable with that? Where such discounts are provided as part of the scheme, such funds will be sourced from within a proposed budget allocation, which will be determined on an ongoing basis. Internal controls to manage the proposed budget allocation includes transfers to the infrastructure account to reimburse the shortfall. Such actions may also support future reporting of infrastructure funding to the state government. I would be proposing, and please Mr CEO speak up if this requires an amendment to the resolution, that clause is removed from the document. On the basis, and there is another clause that I would also where it talks about asset management implications. So page 292. Yeah. So I'd be proposing to council that where we talk there, so where it goes down to the third line down in that bottom paragraph, whilst council is providing a discount to infrastructure cost, full funding of asset infrastructure is maintained given there is an internal reimbursement to infrastructure revenue of discounted charges. Full cost recovery is maintained through the establishment of a budget allocation for discounts provided. I would like to propose that those words are removed. So starting with the words, whilst council is providing a discount, that those two sentences are removed. Rationale for such is that in having received the draft policy and the discussions we've had on this matter, and having had a review undertaken of the LGIP legislation, Part 6, Section 29 of the LGIP legislation, which is the Planning Act. So the Planning Act requires a local government to use levy charges to provide trunk infrastructure only. And so to levy such charges, one needs to adopt an LGIP, a local government infrastructure plan, and we have done that in accordance with the Planning Act. The Planning Act at item 29.1 says that a local government must be able to fund the trunk infrastructure identified in its LGIP from a combination of sources, including infrastructure charges and rates revenue. Now, having done some analysis in relation to this from a financial perspective, it is my view that council can fund such from future rates revenue on the basis that the program we're expecting, if successful, or if we have any discount costs, is going to result in more rateable properties. With more rateable properties, that we're going to have additional infrastructure trunk charges around access fees and around connection fees, and that over approximately a 10-year period, when one runs the numbers around that, one could expect that the recoupment of those discounts applied would be recovered through the rating system. My concern is that if we do both, then we may be, in fact, potentially, from a council point of view, not legally, but not double dipping, but there's a little bit of, we have two sources of income coming into the bucket. So that's the rationale. Councils have the option here, in other words, to fund just the net amount, so just tip in what we receive from the developers, or we top it up with a budget allocation to the full gross amount. Now, the Whitsundays have implemented this in their regional council area, and they adopted to just tip in the net amount. What was their rationale for that? It was that they expected the additional rates revenue from the additional properties would give rise to funding that would then flow into trunk infrastructure, okay? So what I'm suggesting is by taking out those items in the documentation, what we're effectively committing to is that we would tip in the amount that we receive from the developers to trunk infrastructure, but we won't top it up with the discount that we've given the developers out of our budget. General Manager Jarvis, I'd be keen from the Chief Financial Officer's point of view, your thoughts on that from an accounting perspective and financial perspective?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. Yeah, you've clearly articulated, I think, what the intention is there, and I fully support that. I feel we have the capacity to do that, and with this incentive, it will, in my opinion, really increase or give people the incentive to develop and increase our rate base, and we will restrict the net amount there within our reserves. And hopefully we will then, like you say, support it then through the rates revenue and the infrastructure charges that will be generated through this boom, we hope, in development.
Thank you, General Manager. And to be fair to the senior executive team, Mr CEO, other general managers, did you want to add any comments or responses to my observations? Thank you, General Manager O'May.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I suppose that the items you're referring to are actually in the report, and it was written with the, I suppose, the intention that we would be funding out of the operational budget those shortfalls, whereas you've articulated the alternative method where you fund it from the future budget. So those parts actually don't form part of the incentive program. I suppose that was just a strategy about how we saw that council would be funding the shortfall. So, so council just needs to demonstrate in its future financial planning how it will fund the shortfall if we're foregoing the discounts for incentives. So that was the how we'd put forward that it will be funded from the current operational budget, whereas, you've articulated the alternative. So those things are actually in the report. They're not part of the incentive program. So, Mr CEO, I'm not sure that, they were basically how, and that was how we saw that it was funded. So I don't think they can be removed.
Thanks, General Manager. Mr Mayor, I've noted the points that you've raised as concerned, and your articulated point of view will be fed back into the budget process for how we account for this going forward. So, so the resolution still stands.
General Manager, does that provide any lack of clarity to the finance team in terms of should they be actually having to account for the discount? Because what I'm suggesting is that we don't. We just pay in the net amount that we received at this point in time.
Yeah.
We're only restricting the net amount. Sorry.
Yes, that's quite clear. Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes, that's that would be our strategy. Would be to restrict the net amount.
And your comments, Mr Mayor, have given very clear direction on that. I've got them highlighted, so we'll fold that back into the budget process.
Thanks, Mr CEO, for clarifying that. Councillor Duff?
I'm just a bit concerned that it's not going to be articulated now in the resolution. It's just going to be like there's an understanding. Is that what you're suggesting? Because I just think it needs to be articulated in the resolution to show clear direction, so that if in a couple of years' time there's a change of GM or whatever, that it's understood not suggesting anything, but just understood that that's what we do, because there's a big difference between actually putting it in our operational budget and having to fund it annually, as opposed to putting it aside and saying, well, let's hope further down the track that this is going to happen. And when it does get put into, is that in restricted cash, or where does that in restricted cash? Yeah. I just wanted,
Yes.
I just wanted it articulated in this particular recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Mr. CEO, could you perhaps give us some advice?
The suggestion of the mover and the seconder is we take 3 out, because this will become part of then the budget. So where it'll be captured, councillor, is into the, whether it's revenue statement or whatever the appropriate budget mechanism is, it'll be entrenched. So I would not think you probably need 3, because there won't be a formal budget allocation to it. So if you take 3 out, that will give effect to what you're talking about. And then we write it up as part of the budget that we restrict the net amount going forward. And it'll have, my earlier comments, Mr. Mayor, was that with given where you were going, is that we would bring that back, I would think, through the budget process. But yeah, it will come back as so that's documented clearly. Capture the intent.
So by removing item 3, we gives effect, as CEO Mark said, Mr. CEO said, Councillor Duff, to what you're suggesting, because council hasn't authorised a budget allocation for the in-development incentives. Okay, all right. So we've got the resolution.
Excuse me, Mr.
Sorry. Here. Yep, Councillor Potter. So, my apologies.
I just want some clarification around the 100% discount for the last 2 points in the charges. I thought we'd mentioned, I just would like to know what rural activity covers. So does that cover, I'm sure that covers quite a few things and probably covers intensive animal works, but probably through you, Mr. Mayor, to GMO May, I'm thinking.
Yeah, which general manager would like to answer that? General Manager O'May?
Oh.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, exactly right. That would be things like your piggeries, feedlots, any of the rural intensive nursery sort of. So, yeah, fish farm, those sort of activities. And generally those activities would only have the transport component. So there's obviously no water, sewage, parks components in the infrastructure charges for those types of developments.
Thanks, Councillor Potter. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, just a quick one for you, Mr. Mayor. You might be able to, or somebody, one of the staff. I just wanted the effective dates, the 1st of December 2020 to the 30th of June 22. Can I get some clarification if there's a process in place now for development or something that's already started? Does that all, can we have clarity around that, please?
General Manager O'May.
Yeah. So the intention is this is development to be completed. So if there is a development that hasn't commenced and commences now and completes in that time, it would be eligible for that. Yeah.
Thanks, General Manager. Okay, so the motion is as seen there in front of you. Oh, Councillor Schumacher. Sorry, I didn't see your light.
Just if there's an opportunity to speak to it, Mr. Mayor, I'm actually really excited about this development incentive strategy. I think it really does put us at the forefront of growth, and I absolutely believe the South Bennett will be the next growth story. I just wanted to add that, I recognise, and it's stated in the report, that our region is challenged by its heightened level of social disadvantage and, unfortunately with the towns of Kingaroy and Nanango ranking in the top quartile of Queensland's 530 statistical local areas. In 2019, the Australian Bureau of Statistics reported the South Bennett's 3rd consecutive year of population decline at 32,521 people. We've not experienced significant growth since the early 1990s, and while there was some fluctuation into the early 2000s, the facts are, since 2013, our population has continued to decline, and I am very passionate about doing all we can to see this change. It's great that there are so many people knocking on our doors, and we must not lose those opportunities. I believe we must sit these people around the table and do all we can to bring them and their interests here to the South Bennett. We're 2 short hours from everywhere. Our homes are affordable. You can have a backyard, a shed, space for the family dog, and a great school for the kids, and you can afford to have it all here. You can live a great life. You can enjoy any sport or activity you desire. You can cycle all weekend, explore our national parks, go camping, fishing or gliding. You can enjoy wine, our vast landscapes, be a part of our community groups or clubs, And with improved connectivity, there is no job that you couldn't do here. COVID has proven that. We know that market values in our region are low, and this barrier makes it hard for home buyers or builders to be approved for finance, often meaning contracts for sale fall over. We must make the most of these opportunities for tree change to attract and draw businesses, professionals, and skilled residents in ways that will see them call the South Bennett home. I know from the many conversations that we've had across the region that the time is now. I know some businesses are running constant advertisements for jobs that they cannot fill. I know there are waiting lists for rental properties, which are growing at exponential rates. I know that there are investors that are buying properties to rent over the internet, sight unseen. And I know as a council, we absolutely need to do all we can to remove red tape and work hand in hand with our community to attract skilled staff and families to live here. Our local economy relies on a sustainable workforce. There are jobs, but we don't seem to have the people. And when they try to move here, it's not long before their families realise they can live on the coast or in Brisbane. And before too long, these families move away. I know firsthand, and like you can list the many friends I've had over the past 10 years who no longer live in our region. I want to stop this flow of good people and families leaving, and I believe this is one of the steps in the right direction. These development incentives aim to maximise the current boom we are experiencing. It's certainly a good problem to have when local builders may have to leave slabs to cure for longer because there are too many homes on their books to build, when they can't recruit draftsmen, tradies and chippies fast enough. We know there are developers and builders who have projects that they have been sitting on to open up more land and build new homes, and I believe this is our chance, South Bennett. It's great to work with the team to put this strategy before Council, and I'm confident it really will kickstart. It will be the kickstart we need in our region. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Right, thanks, Councillor Schumacher. I might just add a couple of quick comments before we go to vote. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the work that's been undertaken here by Mr CEO, General Manager O'May and his staff in putting together this document. This is a very important moment for our council to implement such a progressive investment incentive scheme. So congratulations, General Manager O'May, on what's been a tremendous job. You've worked alongside Councillor Henson, Councillor Schumacher and myself to bring this to the table today. And part of that has been consulting with developers and builders and those in the real estate industry across the region. And of course, as Councillor Schumacher has highlighted, we have the opportunity to grow our population. We have a demand for real estate in our region that hasn't been seen for probably a decade, and there seems to be a tree change cycle coming upon us, a desire to enjoy the wonderful open spaces that we have, and all going well, we will continue to remain reasonably COVID-free and allow people to see the opportunities that our region offers. Of course, this is something I've talked about for some time, certainly before being elected, that I was keen to progress a process in council whereby we could provide incentives to developers, where we can put in place strategies to help fuel population growth across our region. And I think most importantly, out of this, we can hopefully see now that the demand for real estate, we'll see more land open up, subdivided, we'll see more building work done, and that will also importantly fuel the construction industry. And we know in economics that if your construction industry is doing well, then your economy broadly tends to do well. So with that, with those comments, I'd like to recommend the motion to the floor. Thank you. Manager O'May.
Yeah, just had a point of clarification. Earlier in the meeting, we amended the terms of reference for the standing committee. So the final point 3, we've got so.
Thank you, General Manager, and Mr CEO was also just highlighting that.
Mr Mayor, and to pick up your points about the report, if we promote the development incentive scheme and note the amendments made to the council report.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Mr CEO.
And
so
that'll just tidy that up. Yeah.
Yes, and we've changed item 3 then to the community.
Yep.
Good. So that's been fixed. Thanks, General Manager.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, look, we have the motion in front of us now. It's been moved and I'm comfortable with it as it sits as the mover. Councillor Duff, are you comfortable with it as it sits as the seconder? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Now move on to item, where are we up to? Item 12.4. And this really follows on from the previous item. So this is the Community Group Infrastructure Charges Policy at 299. And so this policy is to address infrastructure charges that would normally apply to community groups that meet the relevant criteria under the policy and provide some discounts in relation to that. Some may be wondering why we have this in addition to our policy that has just been resolved, and I might just ask General Manager O'May just to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this policy, we kicked off this earlier in the year, and we'd been through a process of community consultation. And as the Mayor said, this was about providing a policy around community groups that are doing developments, with aged care homes and that, so to provide some relief for those groups, because what they are doing is in the community benefit. So yeah, so this had started off prior to the development incentive program. We were still bringing this forward because this will stay in place. The intention is this will stay in place. The previous matter we dealt with was a development incentive program. It's to get development happening now. We want to bring forward development, so it's got a limited life. The idea is that this policy would continue on, so if there's community groups looking at doing development, then they've got some surety around the infrastructure charges. So it probably becomes a bit superfluous for the next 2 years, because the other policy, so those groups would still be eligible for the development incentive. So if that's a more advantageous policy, then they would be under that. So it sits in behind there, so that going forward, that there is some surety when they're doing their budgeting and planning for those future projects.
Thank you, General Manager. And just to clarify then that community groups could apply under the policy that's now been resolved to enter into an agreement, an infrastructure charges agreement with Council. So, for example, it was a residential construction to receive the 75% discount. However, once that policy expired, once that scheme expired, they would then fall back to this policy, should it still be in place at that time after June 2022. This policy then serves to give those groups, eligible community groups, the opportunity to grow and expand their activities, and in doing so provides a reduction in infrastructure charges. If the request meets the criteria of the policy, they'll be reduced by Council, and so the applicant needs to be an eligible community group, be a not-for-profit or a charity. Eligible groups must undertake an activity that benefits the community of the South Bennett region as its main object. These include certain community uses and certain residential developments that provide solely for residents over the age of 50 years. Funding sources: if an eligible community group has not received any funding from a government source in the last 2 years, the group is an unfunded eligible community group. If an eligible community group has received funding from a government source in the last 2 years, the group is a funded eligible community group. So we have two categories: unfunded and funded. Okay, and it's all based on whether or not they've been in receipt of government grants or funding within the last 2 years. So the impact of that is that where they apply, if they're an unfunded group, they may apply for a 100% reduction of infrastructure charges up to a maximum of $10,000. If they are a funded eligible community group, they may apply for a 50% reduction of infrastructure charges up to a maximum of $5,000. And of course, Council retains ultimate discretion to determine whether a group is an eligible community group and whether it is funded or unfunded. To receive a reduction in infrastructure charges, an organisation must enter into an infrastructure agreement with Council on Council's standard terms. Okay, so the officer's recommendation is that South Bennett Regional Council adopts the draft community group infrastructure charges policy as outlined in the attachment to this report, that financial delegations be established to the Chief Executive Officer and the General Manager community to approve applications under the community group infrastructure policy. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Councillors wishing to speak for or against, Councillor Duff.
Just concerned about, and I know we've got the first one, which probably would work for some groups at the moment, but like as this policies go, as we move forward, an example of like the Creative Country where they're doing that $1.59 million project, and we've got a cap of $5,000 to $10,000 and $5,000 for unfunded groups. I'm just concerned about the size of the cap when you're talking about some major development. And the other one is that just in Mergen they've got that one with the drop-in centre. Like they're going to be big figures, and I just don't know whether 10 and 5s are going to tick the boxes for them, and where that sits with trunk infrastructure. Not sure about that either. So just wanted some clarity around that. Thank you.
Yeah, General Manager Ramo.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the cap is just essentially that could be varied by council. This is council policy, so that could be varied, particularly if you did have a specific development that council saw real the advantages outweighed it. Yeah, they were put down there as cap. A lot of the funding groups or funding. I suppose we want to encourage the groups to include those infrastructure charges in the funding. So if it is grant funded, that it can pick up those infrastructures as well. So council isn't wearing all of the costs in that manner. But yeah, it's really up to council. Those figures, could be varied.
General Manager, in relation to the funding of the discount component, Councillor Duff, that brings that conversation along again that we just had. Financial and resource implications in the officer's report here talks about council sourcing funds from a proposed budget allocation. Is it possible for us to remove that paragraph from the report so that there is in fact then nothing that's seen to be an intention by council to fund the gap? So again, Susan, General Manager Jarvis, then we'd be just looking to fund, if council was wanting to go that way, to fund the net amount, not the gross amount, to be consistent across both policies. Councillor Duff, coming back to you.
I'm concerned, as I said, about this cap, because I'm just like, even the one that the reason why this was at first brought to the table was the Laurels, and I think that theirs was an $18,000 infrastructure charge of something to that effect, and back to 9 if we what's that? It's 28 to 14. So that's back to, but under this one the cap is 10. So they're still going to be like that. I was of the opinion that we were going to try and give them a 50% discount, but because of the cap now, it's not going to be 50%. It's going to be, they're still going to have to come up with another $4,000. So just a bit not 100% supportive of this because of the cap.
Okay, Councillor Duff, does any other councillors wish to comment, or General Manager May? Is there an appetite in council, would we go back to the start on this, to change the level of the cap? I think we would need to have a cap. But is there an appetite to change the level of the cap? Mr. CEO, what are your thoughts?
I was just wondering, under the first one, would they be considered, General Manager, a reconfiguration of a lot in a residential development? Because it's for a residential purpose.
75%.
So it'd be 75%. So you would apply, not arguing against your point, Councillor, but I was just thinking how you would apply yes, it's an incorporated group, but it's also a residential development, and it's reconfiguring a lot in a residential development. And I would just need to rely on the technical advice, but you would look at which policy was more suitable, I would have thought, in a common sense sort of a way.
Thank you. That's fine, but this is just a short incentive program. We're talking about this one as a long-term support for our community group. So I'm, obviously they're going to grab the better one there, but what about long-term? And that's why I'm a bit reluctant to support this with the cap. And
Right, well, this has been tossed around for some time now. I'm really wanting to try and get this resolved if we can, because there's been a lot of work undertaken by the staff, and I'm reticent to send it back to them to again tweak it. Councillor Duff, do you have a proposal?
Could I move that an amendment, or that it be 20,000 as opposed to 10? The cap and then the other one to 10 as opposed to 5?
Thank you, Councillor Duff. So what we're suggesting here, councillors, is that the financial and resource implications paragraph be removed, or the content of that be written in such a way that we are funding the net, as the finance people call it, the net amount, not the gross amount, with the fees that we collect from the applicant, and that Councillor Duff is suggesting that we change the 10,000 to 20,000 for unfunded groups, and the 5,000 to 10,000 for funded groups, which is shown on page 301 of that policy document. Okay, under the report section. Okay, so Mr. CEO, in terms of proceeding, we could build that in, can we?
You would need mover and seconder, that, or it's just a Councillor Duff's moved an amendment, and does she have a seconder?
Yes. Okay, well, I'm going to suggest that Councillor Duff, what are your thoughts? Are you wanting to move an amendment? I think it's probably more robust, is it, Mark, to move an amendment?
For dollar values like that, it's just, just if we put it, then it's on the books. Yep.
Okay, I'm happy to move an amendment. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Duff has moved an amendment that we increase the maximum from 10,000 to 20,000 for unfunded, 5,000 to 10,000 for funded, and as part of that, Councillor Duff, that we take out the paragraph in relation to under financial and resource implications in the policy. Do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Henson. Okay, those in favour of the amending the resolution? Okay, so that motion has been passed unanimously. So we now have the new substantive resolution, Mr. CEO. I'm learning. We've got the new substantive resolution in front of us now, as you can see it there. Councillor Duff, you'd be moving that, I'd imagine, would you?
Mr. Mayor.
Been moved. Seconder. Yep. Councillor Henson, you're happy to... It's already moved and seconded, so we just need to vote.
Yeah, so the amendment becomes a resolution, and now the amended resolution is what you're dealing with.
So
but it was moved originally, even though it's amended.
Yes, thank you, Mr. CEO. No, I get it now. So we've got that resolution, that motion at hand. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? Right, okay. Those in favour? Thank you all. Resolution passed unanimously. And well done to all the staff again. General Manager O'May, if you could please pass on our thanks for the work that's been undertaken there. Okay, we'll move on to item 13.1, waste disposal fees to account for an increase in the state waste levy liability at 307. And the state government from 1 January next year is increasing the waste levy by $5. In order to comply with the state government's waste levy requirements, Council will have to ensure that it charges sufficient waste disposal fees to account for the state waste levy. So this is to raise the additional $5 that we're going to need to fund the state waste levy that will come in from 1 January. The officer's recommendation is that Council increase its 2020/2021 fees and charges for the following waste disposal items: construction and demolition waste disposal charge to $126.50, commercial and industrial waste disposal charge to $190.50, greater than 10 square metres of domestic self-haul or any commercial asbestos disposal charge to $190.50, and less than 10 square metres of domestic self-haul asbestos disposal charge to $95 from 1 January 2021 for the remainder of the 2021 financial year. I'll move such. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Councillors wishing to speak for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 14.1 is the Kingaroy Airport, amendment of lease for Area 13 at 310. And the recommendation is that in accordance with Section 236 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, a new licence be offered to the current licensee for an additional area of about 72.6 square metres. So that's 72.6 square metres, adjoining the existing Area 13 at the Kingaroy Airport. Do we have a mover for such? Thanks, Councillor Jones. Seconder, thanks, Councillor Schumacher. Councillors, questions? Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Thank you all. Resolution passed unanimously. Tender for lease of Mergen Shops at 313. The committee has recommended, the Executive Committee Standing Committee has recommended to Council that South Bennett Regional Council offer for lease by way of tender our 3 vacant shops at 62 to 70 Lamb Street in Mergen. So as such, the recommendation is that the motion will be that South Bennett Regional Council offer for lease by way of tender the 3 vacant shops at 62 to 70 Lamb Street, Mergen. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Duff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Councillor Froloff, did you put your hand up there? Okay, so those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 14.3, renewal of Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, with South Bennett Care at Wondai Town Hall at 314. And the Executive Committee Standing Committee, the November meeting, is recommending to Council the following, and that South Bennett Care be offered a new Memorandum of Understanding to formalise the continued occupation of the office within the Wondai Town Hall to enable SB Care to continue to manage the activities of Meals on Wheels. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Jones, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. 14.4, Kingaroy Airport, Kingaroy Men's Shed request for approval for a new shed and hard stand at 315. So the committee, the Executive Committee recommending to Council that Council grant approval to the Kingaroy Med Shed to construct a 280 square metre shed subject to the Kingaroy Men's Shed at their cost applying for and being granted all necessary planning and building approvals through Council's Planning Department prior to commencement of construction. All costs are to be borne by the Kingaroy Men's Shed. They construct a concrete slab to the north of the existing motor pool building on the condition that the slab has a depth no longer than the depth of the motor pool building with a width of 3 metres. The slab is sited at least 300 millimetres from the outermost edge of the motor pool building external cladding and is not to be enclosed with any walls or roof. If used for rinsing or cleaning of equipment, paint or other toxic chemicals are to be bunded and not to run off the slab onto the open ground or stormwater. All costs are to be borne by the Kingaroy Men's Shed. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Right, speakers for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Menango Tennis Club lighting at 317. So the Executive Committee Standing Committee is recommending to Council that Council funds the upgrade of 4 light poles for $20,000 to allow the new LED lights to be installed. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Froloff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Henson. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Big Peanut Sculpture in Lions Park at 318. So again, where are we at here? Sorry, no. The Executive Committee Standing Committee recommends that Council provide in principle support for the placement of a Big Peanut Sculpture in Lions Park, Kingaroy, subject to Council's further approval of the final proposal, including elements such as design, location, ownership and maintenance requirements. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 14.7, sale by tender of 20 William Street, Kingaroy at 319. And so the background here is that Council has offered for sale Lot 4 on RP 7914 being 20 William Street, Kingaroy by tender in accordance with Section 236 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. Now, tenders have closed and been evaluated, and Council is in a position to progress the matter. The matter was tabled at the ordinary meeting of Council, 16th December 2020, and it was resolved that the matter lay on the table. So the officer's recommendation now is that Council finalise the tender process for the sale of Lot 4, RP 7914, 20 William Street, Kingaroy by entering into negotiations with the highest tenderer, and if the current market value of the property is reached, enter into contract of sale for the property, or if negotiations with the highest tenderer does not result in a sale of the property at current market value, list the property for sale on the open market. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. Speakers for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we'll move straight through now to item 16.1, which is a notice of motion, Kingaroy Street at 324. And Mr. CEO, I might just refer this notice of motion to you. Thank you.
I was going to ask, have a query. Given the amended resolution before dealt with the same matter, Council would be unlikely, I would imagine, to pass two resolutions in conflict, for want of a better term, on the same day. So this matter would just rest, and it's been superseded effectively by the earlier resolution.
Councillor Schumacher, are you? Yeah, thank you, Mr. CEO. That does make sense. And Councillor Schumacher, are you of a mind where you're prepared to allow the matter to rest and effectively we'll stay with the pre-existing resolution?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I understand that's due process, so thank you.
Right. Thanks very much, Mr. CEO and Councillor Schumacher. So 17.1, delegated authority reports at 325. The officer's recommendation is that the delegated authority report be received. There are 6 attachments there which are presented in the agenda for all to see. We have a mover for such. Thank you, Councillor Potter, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Speaker for or against? Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. Item 18.1 is now the... we're moving into discussion in relation to the confidential section. So if we go to 448 in the agenda, and I'll read out the officer's recommendation. Can I do that, Mr. CEO? I was just going to read the... Can I do that? So this is the resolution.
Oh, okay, sorry, yep, yeah, my apologies, yep.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO. So the recommendation is that Council considers the confidential reports listed below in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with Section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012. South Bennett Community Hospital Foundation Limited Board meeting minutes of July 2020. This matter is considered to be confidential under Section 254J of the Local Government J to H, of the Local Government Regulation, and the Council is satisfied that discussion of this matter in an open meeting would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest as it deals with negotiations relating to the taking of land by the local government under the Acquisition of Land Act of 1967. Sale of Coolabunga sale yards by way of tender. This matter is considered to be confidential under Section 254J to G of the Local Government Regulation, and that Council is satisfied that discussion of this matter in an open meeting would, on balance, be contrary to the public interest as it deals with negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving the local government for which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interest of the local government. Do we have a move for such? Thank you, Councillor Duff, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Thank you all. As such, I'll now close the meeting. I'll move that we close the meeting to go into confidential, into committee. Have a seconder for that? Do I? Oh, we've done it. I've closed the meeting. Oh, very good. Okay. Excellent. Okay, welcome everybody. I'll now move a motion that we reopen the ordinary public meeting of council at 2:45 p.m. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillors all in favour of reopening. Meeting now open. Okay, the first matter at hand is the item 18.1 in relation to the South Bennett Community Hospital. And please will note that Councillors Schumacher and Potter are leaving the room on the basis of conflict of interest brought about by their membership of the Foundation's board. And the recommendation is that the information report on South Bennett Community Hospital Foundation Limited Board meeting held on 14 July 2020 be received. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Duff. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Those in favour? Resolution passed unanimously. Item 18.2 on the agenda. We'll move forward to bring the councillors back. Yes, thank you. So Councillor Schumacher and Potter have now returned to the meeting upon the finalisation of the matter on the hospital board, and we will now note that Councillor Froloff has left the room voluntarily on the basis of a declarable conflict of interest that she's provided in relation to the sale of the Coolabunga sale yards. Okay, now there's been much consideration and careful consideration and deliberation by this in committee, in closed session of council, in relation to the private and confidential information provided by the three tenderers, and as such, I will now move that, following that as a result of the substantial capital loss that would be realised on disposal of the freehold site, and in response to more recent community concerns as to the potential risk to the ongoing operation of the facility in the hands of a private operator, that council not accept any tenders or enter into negotiations with a preferred tenderer, and that council prepare a comprehensive 5-year business plan for the future operations of the facility, incorporating a review and report to council on the preferred ownership structure, a revised fees and charges schedule based on market rates, a projected profit forecast, and a capital investment program incorporating opportunities for external funding. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Does any councillor wish to speak for or against the motion? You may speak for or against the motion, but please keep all of those confidential matters confidential. But Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that the community will be happy with our recommendation. I think that there was a lot of concern with the community about the potential risk to the operation falling into private hands and potentially losing that facility for forever for the sale yards, and because once we sold the yards, obviously we have no control over what whoever the future owner would do with those sale yards. I think that the community should be very happy with the outcome here, and also obviously the substantial capital loss with the tenders that came in is another reason why we've supported this. So I'm happy to second this recommendation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Schumacher?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I absolutely agree. I do see it fit that council not accept the proposed tender, and that we prioritise the sale yard operations going into the future. It's certainly an enormous economic enabler for our region, and we know that the sale yard, Councillor Potter and I have talked about, the sale yard is like the library and the community hall of the farmers in our region. It plays a critical role, and certainly as a council we have a responsibility to appropriately invest in this facility. I see that we must operate this facility in a commercially responsible way into the future, and actively seek grants and funding to bring the sale yards and its operations up to the standard in which the people of our region deserve. So thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm fully supportive of this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Schumacher. So what I'm hearing from council is that there's a strong desire from council to see the Coolabunga sale yards remain as sale yards, but to be moved onto a commercial footing where they can be a viable entity in their own right, and that will be able to then, set them up so that they can be financially sustainable and continue to provide that sale yard service to the community moving forward. Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to quickly reiterate what has been said here just now by my fellow councillors, but I'd like to highlight 2B, a revised fees and charges schedule based on market rates. The proposal that we're putting forward, it's a great success story for the community, but we as a council need to, that'll be one of the things that I will be looking at intensely. So I just want to just highlight 2B in this proposal, but fully on board with this, and I can see a great outcome in the coming years.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jones. And of course, 2B refers to the fact that making sure that the fees and charges are in line with putting the facility on a commercial footing, that the fees and charges are in accordance with what other commercial operators are charging. For two reasons: we need it to be profitable and viable if we can reinvest in the long-term future of the sale yards, which is clearly what we all want, and two, to make sure that we aren't adversely impacting on the operations of any commercial sale yard across our region or close by. Right, well, that's very good. So we've got a mover and a seconder. No other councillor wishes to speak for or against. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you all. Resolution passed unanimously. Right, well, I'll now move to close the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Jones, for seconding that. Thank you, councillors all. I don't have to, I never get that right. I just close the meeting